Good evening, everyone. I now call to order the regular meeting of the City Council and Housing Authority for Tuesday, June 4th, 2024. Please join me in standing as a video plays the national anthem and remain standing, and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance together. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag Okay, now it's time for our moment of solemn expression, and we're lucky to have, once again from Redemption Church, Pastor Christine Noth.
Good evening, council, neighbors, those that are watching online. I have a modified prayer from the Psalm 126 that I modified for Costa Mesa. When the Lord brings me to Costa Mesa, it will be like a dream. No one will be in need. All will be housed. We will be delighted by our differences. Businesses will flourish. Children will envision a hopeful future, and we will all laugh. Everyone will be free of addiction, and the rest of Orange County will say, "What amazing things God has done for them." Yes, the Lord will do amazing things for us. The wisdom of elders will be celebrated. What joy. The most vulnerable are safely housed. What joy. We gladly gather as neighbors throughout the city. What joy. Parents who thought their children were lost have restored relationships. Police and neighbors collaborate in harmony. Across languages and religions, we are reconciled. Teachers who labor with little resources, council members who are in long meetings, who endure critiques of society and demands of others will see the fruit of their labor in content and successful young people and neighbors. We may have wept as we went to plant our seeds, but we will sing when we see the harvest. May it be so.
Amen. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, could you please do the roll call?
Mr. Mayor, the record will reflect that all council is present except for Councilmember Harper.
Okay. Now, we don't have any presentations today, so we're going to go right into public comments. As always, the public comments are 3 minutes. At 2 minutes, you'll hear some ding, or if you don't hear it, I'll make some indication that you have 1 minute left. And then please wrap it up because we do cut off the mics at 3 minutes. You could talk about anything that's on the consent calendar. You could talk about anything that's not on the consent calendar other than what is on the notice, public hearings, and new business item. So with that, let's start it off. Mr. McAvoy, you have the floor.
Good evening. I'd like to address a few items tonight. First, I want to share how easy it is to manipulate public opinion using statistics. In the month of January of this year, 25% of the vehicles that have the technology to enforce permit parking in Costa Mesa were broken down. 25%. Now let me actually explain the reality. The city has 4 vehicles that have the technology to enforce permit parking. In January, one of the 4 vehicles was removed from service due to a software glitch. 25% sounds more impactful compared to 1 vehicle. I want to point this out because statistics are used to manipulate. The number that's actually most important is that the city only has 4 vehicles capable of enforcing permit parking. This explains why permit parking is not enforced on nights and weekends, still not enforced. The city is not providing a service that it has made individual residents pay hundreds of dollars a year for. The permit parking program used to be free, and it was enforceable by all patrolling officers. The city attorney needs to listen very carefully here. The city is aware of this enforcement deficiency. If the city does not present this relevant information to the newly enrolled streets of Joanne and Federal, the city is committing fraud by omission. I also believe without doubt that the city is intentionally created a bad permit parking program. It's like there's a war on cars. Take West 19th Street, for example. Who in the right mind would take a road that is at the end of the 55 freeway and reduce it from 2 lanes to 1 lane? There's so much traffic that is created at the end of the 55 freeway. Why make it intentionally worse? West 19th Street has always been a thoroughfare for cars exiting the 55 freeway. West 19th Street has never been a highly biked street. Everybody knows, the planning commissioner needs to know, that you ride bikes on parallel residential streets such as Plummer and Center. The West 19th Street needs to be fixed. After the street has been reduced to a single lane at Pomona, it is difficult to make a right turn, near impossible to turn onto it. The enhancement has created cut-through traffic on adjacent neighborhoods. People race down my street. Reckless driving is extremely common between Placentia and Monrovia because of lack of a center lane. Most importantly, it is more difficult for emergency vehicles to reach our side of town from the Park Avenue Fire Station. It is an election year, and the enhanced West 19th Street will be an election issue. You already know how unpopular it is by the emails you have gotten. It'll grow more unpopular between now and the election. If anybody wants to help join out, please join my Facebook group, Let's Fix West 19th Street, and read my blog, Costa Mesa Lampoon.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Mr.
Good
Humphrey.
evening, Council. Jay Humphrey, Costa Mesa resident. I just want to give hands up and happiness and everything to staff and the council for Adams Avenue. What a pleasure to drive on that street now that it's changed substantially. While there's still work to be done and there's still significant work for the underground to be done, the change is remarkable, and hopefully we'll maintain it and maintain the process, because it's a major thoroughfare in Costa Mesa to and from our neighbors across the river. And it is now a really drivable street. And I think in the end it'll even be safer once you've done the undergrounding. Hopefully we don't have to tear up half the street we just laid to do that. So thank you very much for that, Adams, and we look forward to the rest of the city coming up to that kind of par. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Lynn Redmond. To understand fully what I have to say tonight, please review my comments from the 3 previous City Council meetings. My wife Judith, my son Christian, and I have been Costa Mesa residents for many years, and we feel privileged to have lived within walking distance to Fairview Park for most of those years. In 2014, Christian began his Coast Live Oak Tree project, one of several habitat restoration projects he completed at Fairview Park. Our family has striven to keep those trees alive and weed-free during drought, gopher attacks, and counterproductive activities by the city's contractors, and 12 of the 26 trees have survived to date. Tony, could you put this photo is one of the oak trees. I took that photo about a week ago. They're actually along the walkway down by Pondea in the riparian area. Christian and I, in our May 2nd meeting with the Director of Parks and the Fairview Park Administrator, were advised to stay out of the park, stay out of this oak tree project area. They've reclassified that area now as a sage scrub habitat and have contracted with Barry Nairhouse's endemic ICRE to maintain that area. Now, if you go outside, we have the Liberty Tree. And in 1976, it was dedicated with a nice bronze plaque. Now, my hope was at one time one of Christian's trees would reach that magnificence. And in the meantime, all his awards, his 4-H Emerald Clover, the Diamond Star, his Boy Scout Eagle, his Sea Scout Quartermaster, his Venturing Summit, and his Distinguished Conservation Service Award, topped by the Congressional Gold Medal, would all be, no one would remember anything of that. But hopefully, he and maybe if he has children or grandchildren or friends could walk by that tree, hopefully as resplendent as the Liberty Tree is now, and point to that tree and say, I planted that tree and my mom and I kept it alive and healthy all these years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Brooke Bolger. I'm a Costa Mesa resident in College Park, and I'm here to talk to you about parking enforcement. A few years back, College Park went through an extensive parking study. The parking enforcement was suspended. My neighbors and I trusted the process. We did the right thing. We worked with the city. We applied for permits and got parking permits in College Park. When there's parking violations, we again trust the process and call the parking hotline. Yet still, just about every night, our permitted parking street is absolutely full. We ask for some sort of either revised enforcement, enhanced enforcement, or randomization of enforcement, because it seems like whoever's parking on those streets has either figured out the patrol times or is just ignoring it. We don't have the resources to enforce these rules. And I just want to put a couple of anecdotes out there to show the knock-on effects from doing this. My entire street, most of which are twice my age and are great neighbors, can't park in front of their homes if they come home in the evening. And they don't get around so well. It's leading to distrust in just the local government. It's leading towards distrust to our neighbors across the street who constantly park in front of everybody's house. Typically, there has been no friction between us and these neighbors, but it's actually increasing level of friction. And furthermore, and finally, there's a growing and vehement opposition to further development. When talking with my neighbors, all they ask is, if something else gets built across the street, what's that going to mean for me? Am I going to be able to use my house? This is a mood shift that's happened, quite frankly, very visibly in the last few years that I've lived here, and it really comes down to simple parking enforcement. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like
Yeah,
to speak
hold on
on.
one second. So can you make sure to connect with Sergio back there, and he'll address your concerns? Thank you. What's that? Oh, what street was it? What street is it? Cornell. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. I'm sorry, ma'am.
Oh, that's all right.
Go ahead.
I'm here to speak on a couple of the initiatives the city has had. Number one, K, which was a city measure that was pushed and supported by the mayor and the majority of his council. And the purpose of K was to weaken Measure Y. Now, Measure Y was a community effort that had volunteers walking the streets and getting 7,000 signatures to get that on the ballot. Now, all you had to do to put K on the ballot was to press your little button, and that went on the ballot for the residents. Now, unlike the current council has their will to place Measure K on the ballot, unlike Y, the council voted from the dais. They used the power and resources of the city to promote their measure, but in addition, a PAC was funded by developers who would profit financially from this measure if it passed. The two major developers donated heavily. Rose Equities donated $50,000 of the $106,000 used to promote K. Costa Mesa First fought this measure with less than $7,000, losing by only 22 votes because there was the money to vote cure and change the outcome, but only 22 votes. Rose Equity had donated many of the city events with major support each year for Mayor Stevens' 3rd of July event, around $5,000 each year. Rose Equity knows how to play the game and had the money to do so and subvert our city for their future profits. Measure K along with Y are the laws of the city, but in some distorted perception, K is now to be considered to be retroactive, although nowhere in any part of this action is that enumerated. Our residents were guaranteed that the council would uphold Y. And I say, well played, Rose Equities. You are attempting to get a big bang for your contributions and more than just the fireworks show. Costa Mesa seems to be short on promises to the residents and long on influence by contributors that pass K. Y should be upheld, and in the shuffle, the contributions by Rose Equities and other profits have overshadowed the People's Initiative. Is retroactivating an initiative even legal? Are we headed for more litigation like sober living, cannabis? You can't make up the rules as you go along. Disappointing and the loss of faith hangs over your heads. The residents are counting on you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good evening, Cynthia McDonald, Costa Mesa resident. Happy Pride Month. Pride Month is about acceptance, equality, and celebrating the work of our LGBTQ friends and their culture. We honor those who participated in the Stonewall riots that were an important part to uplifting the voices of the community. It's also a time to bring awareness to issues, particularly hate crimes against our friends and our family. I saw the flag out front of City Hall, and I hope the City Council will also show some support by highlighting events and attending them, which brings me to how the city is sending out notifications. I get the Friday snapshot, but most of that is about events that's already happened. There are a few events sandwiched in towards the bottom that are about the future. I suggest you take a look at how Irvine gives notification of their events because it's much better, and they've already sent out a notification of the Pride events for this month. Which brings me to City Council agendas. Irvine releases their agenda 2 weeks before the meeting. The staff reports are released 1 week before the meeting. Other cities follow similar procedures. By the time the Costa Mesa agendas get to the public on Friday evening, we are tired from the work week, and it really isn't fair or transparent to make us rush through packed agendas. Finally, we have heard very little about your strategic planning retreat on April 19th. I would like to hear that you are finally going to adopt an ethics policy and receive training. I'm looking at your faces and I'm seeing you thinking, dream on, sister. You know, this is an important part of transparency, and the residents need to know our leaders are acting ethically. Otherwise, you can't blame us for not trusting you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening, council and mayor and council, I guess. Just a quick one. I would like to make a comment first, I guess. I'm kind of surprised that the agenda report's not printed double-sided, and requested that be printed double-sided in the future. I think it was about a month ago I was going to make a comment that night, but it was double-sided, so I didn't. But then since then, it's been single-sided. So I think it would send the right message for economic as well as using less natural resources. Thank you.
All right, I don't see anybody else coming from the chambers. Do we have anybody on Zoom, Madam Clerk?
Yes, the first speaker is Roberto.
Roberto, you have the floor.
Hi, Mayor and City Council. This is Roberto with Resilience Orange County, and I had sent I sent an email to Councilmember Chavez around the Callejon, Plummer Street along Center Street. We've been talking about the deteriorating conditions. And I was able to get back with the community from Center Street, and they had proposed 2 Saturdays, Saturday, July 13th or Saturday, July 20th. If any of those dates you are available, Councilmember Chavez, we're happy to invite the community in that neighborhood just to have a community meeting to explain to them just possible options on, how to move forward with making that street a little bit more accessible and clean. So thank you so much. If I'll follow up on email with you. I also wanted to invite Councilmember Marr. We are hosting a Know Your Rights training in a tenants Know Your Rights training in the Mesa del Mar neighborhood on Wednesday, June 26th at 6 p.m. We're just letting the public know about the city's resources as it relates to rental assistance, and then also any legal assistance that tenants may need in relationship to any eviction notices that they may have received. I know that the city is contracted with legal service providers to provide that assistance to low-income tenants. So we're letting them know about that. And then also the city's recently adopted a tenant protection ordinance that was passed last year in November. So we're just passing the word around that information and the resources that the city has. So I welcome you to come out to that Know Your Rights workshop on June 26th at 6 p.m. And as I've been mentioning earlier, it would be nice if the city can publish the agendas longer, sooner than the 72-hour notice. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the meeting today. Bye-bye.
Next speaker is Wano.
Juana, you have the floor. Juana, do you need?
Buenas tardes.
Hold
Buenas
on
tardes.
uno momento. I'm here. You got it?
Gracias.
You good? Okay, we're ready to go. 5 minutos. Okay, we got it. Go ahead.
Gracias. Lamento mucho no poder estar allí hoy, pero por causas de fuerza mayor no pude asistir, pero eso no es un impedimento para que no lo pueda hacer por Zoom. Gracias porque tienen este servicio también, para que podamos nosotros, expresar nuestras preocupaciones. Tengo que parar para que traduzca a alguien.
Adelante, yo traduzco. Good evening, and sorry I wasn't able to be there for tonight's meeting. I just couldn't go because things that were out of my hands. But thankfully, we're able to do this through Zoom, so I just want to thank you all for being able to have this service so that we can still express our worries.
Bueno, pues estamos muy preocupados aquí en nuestra comunidad de Mesa del Mar, porque este fin de semana borronearon por toda la comunidad aquí. Sabemos que es un costo para los dueños y también para la ciudad si es que los dueños no pintan todo lo que han borroneado. Una pandilla que parece ser que por las iniciales es la pandilla de Costa Mesa.
And so we're very worried in our community because the community is Mesa del Mar, because this weekend there was graffiti all around, and that turns out to be very costly, not only for the owners, but also for the city if the owners don't have the money to paint over this graffiti. And this seems like it was done by a gang. It seems like the initials are the gang of the city of Costa Mesa.
He estado conversando con algunos padres de familia y se muestran muy preocupados porque en este último mes ha habido mucho vandalismo aquí en nuestra comunidad.
And I've been talking to some of the parents, and they're really worried because in this last month, there's been a lot of vandalism here in our community.
Sabemos que hay también reportes de jóvenes que no viven aquí, que están viniendo a hacer cosas que pues no deben de hacer, ¿verdad? Y entendemos la preocupación de los padres y más ahora que los chicos van a salir de vacaciones.
And so we know that there's been reports about youth that don't live here, but that they have been coming here to do things that they shouldn't be doing. And so we understand the worry that the parents have, especially now that they're going to be off of school.
Les agradeceríamos mucho si pudieran por lo menos algunas 2 veces por semana que la policía pasara para que no empiecen los chicos pandilleros a apropiarse de las comunidades, que es lo que menos queremos.
We'd be really grateful if you could at least have the police pass by at least twice a week so that the kids and the gang members don't start taking over the communities, which is something we're really scared of.
Nosotros no queremos ser una comunidad que sea manejada por pandilleros.
We don't want to be a community that's led by gang members.
Eso es todo. Mi nombre es Juana Trejo y muchísimas gracias por su atención.
That's all. Thank you so much. My name is Juana Trejo, and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Juana. Okay, close public comments. Now we're going to go to the the council committee reports, comments and suggestions. And let's start with District 5, Councilmember Arliss Reynolds. Are your mic, okay, hold on, yeah, that should do it.
Thanks. And I just missed, well, didn't quite miss her. Pastor Christine Nolf, your poem was beautiful. I'd love if you'd be willing to share that. I really love your vision for our city and our community. So thank you for your service in sharing that beautiful vision that we should all be working towards. Okay. Also want to give a thanks to Resilience, who we heard on the call. I'll often talk about different community organizations doing work in our neighborhoods, and Resilience is a relatively new one in Costa Mesa who, as you've heard from the work they're doing, is just really doing fabulous work, organizing community members and really helping the city tailor our services to the needs in the neighborhood. So thank you to that team. There's lots of thanks. Huge thanks to the Freedom Committee who puts on our annual Memorial Day event in Costa Mesa. That's been an event that's become a tradition for me to go to with my father, who was a Marine Corps officer in Vietnam. It's funny, when I talk about different city events, he's usually not very interested at all in going to things, but he always loves to go to that one, and it's really nice to spend that time with him and hear some of his stories on the trips there and back. But it's just a really beautiful ceremony, and I know a lot of work goes into it. It's put on really, really well, and I just appreciate all of the volunteers and organizations who are a part of it. Happy Pride Month. I'm proud that Costa Mesa is flying the flag this month. My understanding is we'll be doing a proclamation at our next council meeting. There's a lot of great organizations in our community supporting the LGBTQ community, and proud to support as well and acknowledge the various challenges that community faces, but also acknowledge the great pride and reasons to celebrate as well. A few events that I went to, just wanted to share. So we kicked off our bike safety education program with an event at the Senior Center. It was a really fun event. I'm excited to see that program continue to roll out and evolve. Lots of parents there. We had some teens come by on their e-bikes who went through the e-bike course and got some helmets. So I think that's going well, and I'm excited to continue to see that grow. I'm not sure the exact timing, but maybe before the start of the school year, it'd be great to have maybe Brett Atencio Thomas come and just give a presentation on what the plan is for that program, especially the rollout in our schools. We want to get the word out because it's a really great educational opportunity. And, this is going a few weeks back, but I neglected last time, I wanted to acknowledge the staff who were involved in the Access Costa Mesa Resource Fair. I attended that, had planned to just swing by for 15 minutes and check things out, and I ended up, I think, spending an hour and a half or so. And I heard from some of the team members just how that program evolved. My memory of it is we recognize that there is a segment of our community that has different disabilities or learning challenges, and we weren't at the time very deliberate in making sure that we were connecting those community members with resources. And so I guess our team went out to different cities who had similar resource fairs, reached out to the organizations who were presenting in those cities, and brought people in. Hopefully I'm sharing this correctly. And it was just really fantastic to hear sort of the evolution of how this program is growing. And I wanted to acknowledge staff for recognizing the need and being really thoughtful in putting that together. People were really enjoying themselves. And I think being connected with both very necessary resources related to finance and housing and other key services, but also art opportunities and other community engagement opportunities. So it was just a really special event, and I felt bad that I had forgotten to mention it last time. So congrats to that team, and thank you for that work. And then just lastly, I was able to attend a small celebration for Robert Santana, who is the CEO of the local Boys and Girls Club in Orange County. He received an award from Boys and Girls Club National. It's the highest honor that they give, and they honor one person every year. And he was honored. I guess it was a surprise to him, but it was really fantastic to be there to celebrate him. He expressed interest actually in coming into Costa Mesa to one of our meetings and giving a presentation on the programs they're offering and some expansion ideas that they have. So I want to make sure we get that on the schedule. And then I want to make sure our Director of Parks and Community Services has a chance to meet him and tour the facility that we have right now. So lots of good things going on in Costa Mesa, and I'm just really thankful for all of the staff, volunteers, and organizations who are doing that work. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. So from District 4, Councilmember Manuel Chavez.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Happy Pride Month. And to all those seniors and college graduates, congratulations on your graduations. I know this week we'll see Estancia, Costa Mesa High School, Newport Harbor, and CDM graduate. Last week was early college, so congrats to everyone on the new part of their journey in life. 5 quick things, mainly public comments I want to address. First of all, I want to just say what a joy it's been to be going to all these ceremonies for high school graduates on behalf of my job, Save Our Youth, and it's always a pleasure to see our law enforcement team there. Yesterday, I was at Mesa's High School's Senior Award Night, and not only did I see our Fire Department Association there honoring our Captain Mike Kriza to a scholarship. I also saw our Police Explorer team there as well, honoring those students that participated in the program. And it's always a pleasure to see our students' hard work recognized by our community, and it's a pleasure to see our public safety team acknowledging our community. So thank you guys on behalf of all Costa Mesa for doing that. Real quickly to Ms. Trejo's comment about the students out of school, I'm aware that as kids have idle hands, they do more rambunctious things. So anyone in the community that sees graffiti or sees anything that shouldn't be going on, we have the Costa Mesa 311 app where you can report graffiti or any vandalism of the sort. Additionally, if you see someone being rowdy and you don't want to call the police because it's not an urgent thing, you can always call the non-emergency number, which is 714-754-5280. On regards to 19th Street, I'll be real brief because it's becoming a recurring comment. The first thing is always going to be public safety, making sure people are safe. I am sensitive to the concerns people raise with the narrowing of the street. But what I will say is we will look into options, but the first and foremost thing is public safety. So if we feel and we see that data reflects that going back to 2 lanes is more dangerous, then I don't think I support going back. But I do support looking into it. On transparency, I agree. We need to look at our neighbors and see what we can model ourselves and we can do better. I would want to see us go for more a lead time for agenda items. I don't think it's too much to ask for. I think we take a meeting off in August anyways. We can use that to do it, but it's good for the community to have more time to look at items. And finally, to Resilience, sorry, I did not see the email. Apologies, but happy to meet on July 20th. We can coordinate later, but thanks everyone being here today, and have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Now from District 2, Councilmember Lauren Gameros.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few things I just want to go over. First of all, I also want to thank the Freedom Committee for their Memorial Day event. They put on a really, really good presentation, and they get the opportunity to kind of take us back in history. And with everything that they do, it wouldn't be just a great observation of Memorial Day without the commitment that they bring with everything that they do. So I want to thank them for that. I also want to say Happy Pride Month. I know inclusivity is very important. I want to also recognize the LGBTQ community and say that I'm here to support them for whatever their needs are. I also want to take a moment. I had a chance to get with Brian Gruner and the Parks and Community Services to talk about some of the improvements that we've been looking at improving for our youth sports and baseball fields. And some of the things that we're kind of looking at right now for the improvements for our Little League and for our Pony Leagues is the Tewinkle Sports Park and the Luke Davis Field. We're going to be looking at some lighting improvements. We're also trying to put together a program where we can have batting cages. In addition to that, with our infields, we want to have some AstroTurf, and we want to have proper drainage so that everybody can enjoy the baseball fields, not just for Little Leagues, but we also have adult leagues too. So other than that, when we're talking about transparency, I do agree with Councilmember Chavez. If anyone ever has anything that they want to speak to me about or get with me about, I have an open door policy. You can reach out to any of the constituent services members. Staff will always give you my contact information. I have a cell phone. You want to reach out to me on my cell phone. I always return my calls as fast as I can, and I'm happy to give out my number to anyone that wants to reach out. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember. Now from District 3, Councilmember Andrea Marr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy Pride Month, everybody. I apologize. I was out sick and missed the budget study session, and then I was on vacation. So I'm pretty behind. So I'm going to talk about some things from May. In May 11th, we held a skate park meeting where we got input from the community, thanks to a grant from Supervisor Foley. That process is not done yet. If you still have thoughts about what you'd like to see at the skate park, I will say it was a super well-attended event with lots and lots of great input. But if you have thoughts, there were some competing priorities around folks who want a pump track versus folks who want different size bowls. But staff did a really excellent job of soliciting input from the community. It was a really nice event. Still happy to hear comments if you have thoughts and feelings about what you'd like to see at the skate park. On May 11th, I also attended Project Hope Alliance's anti-gala. This is something they do every single year. If you're not familiar with Project Hope Alliance, they help the hundreds of kids in Newport Mesa Unified School District and school districts around the country, or excuse me, around the county, that are homeless, on the verge of homelessness, or otherwise having crises at home. And so it was an incredible event. I'm glad that they received so much support from the community in Costa Mesa, but it just continues to reinforce how much work we have to do for those that need the most help. Going way back to Earth Day, there was somebody there talking about how, currently we can raise chickens in Costa Mesa, but we can't do honeybees. And so I'm going to talk to the Animal Services Committee about what we might need to do in order to consider legalizing honeybees. Chief, I'm sorry in advance. I know that would probably fall under your purview, and I know that's not what you want to be focused on, but I still, after seeing bees come to life in my front yard, after going all native, planting in my front yard, it's an area that I'm excited about. And I had one other thing, parking in College Park. So I've heard a couple of concerns. I think the gentleman that spoke tonight was right that some of the streets that have invested in the parking permit program also don't feel like the enforcement is quite there yet. So I'd like to understand that a little bit better if staff could could provide me, I don't know, a briefing or a summary of how we're doing enforcement at this moment. I think the other piece of it for Mr. Sethuraman is actually some confusion about what's going to happen during the fair. So my understanding is that we're still going to do parking permits for everybody who has traditionally received the paper parking permits allowing them to park and be doing regular enforcement. I do think there was some miscommunication because I know at least one College Park Street felt like they needed to register for the parking program to avoid the fair concern. So we could probably do better specifically for the College Park neighborhood in communicating both on the enforcement piece and what's going to happen during the fair. So I don't know if we want to talk about a mailer or something, but like I think there's a little bit of work to be done there. And that is all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Welcome back. So then we have now from District 6, Mayor Pro Tem Jeff Harlan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy Pride Month. Pleased to see the flag flying in front of City Hall again. As Councilmember Chavez mentioned, this is a very busy time of year with the end of school. But one event in particular I always enjoy is the what was formerly known as the Pilot Cup. Now it's the Newport Mesa Soccer Classic. And I think as was stated at the ceremony on Sunday, that name is very tough to change. But it's a great event. All the local elementary schools, public and private, compete against each other. They field teams from 3rd through 6th grade. Kids who've never played soccer play with kids who are on club teams. It's really just a great event. And the mayor and I were there on Sunday during the medal ceremony. We happened to catch the end of at least one game. Actually, the last 2 games both ended in penalty kicks, which is incredibly exciting. As a parent who's lived through both the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat there, I felt all of those parents' pain. But I wanted to thank, in particular, Costa Mesa United and Kirk McIntosh and Brett Eccles for putting on yet another great event. And now the field will be ready for the Raiders. A few reports I would like for staff to come back to us with, and most of these are things that I've mentioned in the past. One is on Tessa. I think it's about time we get a review of how that's working or not working, and for us to figure out what to do next and how to improve things. Secondly, the Economic Development Strategic Plan, something we as a council approved nearly 2 years ago, seems to have completely fallen off the radar, so I'd like to know where we are with that. Still important for us moving forward. And third, I think it's time for us also to have a legislative committee report. We've got a new government affairs manager. The legislature's going to be in summer recess shortly, so I'd like for us to at least understand what bills might be coming into play in the fall, so we can advocate for them if we need to, or take any kind of positions. Another update I'd appreciate is on Harper Park. I've mentioned in the past there we had a 6-month pilot program to provide park rangers. It's a lot of alliteration there. That time is past, school's ending, so I think we can better dedicate our public safety resources elsewhere, citywide. So I'd like to know what the conversations are with the school district to make sure that we can also move that forward. And then lastly, I'll talk a little bit more about this later when we get to the budget, but Mr. Mayor, I'd like to put on the agenda for council's consideration an item to talk about the capital improvement project threshold increase. Currently, it's $30,000 for a capital improvement project, and apparently that also includes staff time that's used to evaluate the projects. That's, in my mind, a very low bar and makes our process very cumbersome. So in addition to talking about the whole CIP program, I'd like to at least get that up for council's review in the short term. I think that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That's a good item. So, yeah, I support that. Just going through my list of things, yes, the Newport Mesa Soccer Classic, formerly the Daily Pilot Cup, or the Pilot Cup, went forward. It was a lot of fun, and everything that Mayor Pro Tem said about it was true. What he didn't tell you is that in that exciting game that we ended on penalty kicks, he's got a little bit of a rooting interest. Kaiser won that game. They beat Cardin Hall, and it was not only penalty kicks, but double penalty kicks. So sudden death penalty kicks. So thanks again to Costa Mesa United, Kirk McIntosh, and Brett Eccles for doing that. That's great. And in fact, the Raiders not only have access to the field, but I went out there at like 8 o'clock on Tuesday, or Monday rather, and that was yesterday, and they were already digging holes. So they're out there digging holes, getting ready. So the Raiders are here. In no particular order, regarding what Councilmember Marr mentioned about the bees, the Animal Services Committee has done the work on bees, and they were waiting for a council member like Councilmember Marr to ask for it to come forward. So it's not going to be a lot of hard work for the PD. They just got to dust it off and bring it up to us. So it's great. Yes. So anyway, Michael's reopened on Saturday, and that's on 17th Street, of course. And that's a big deal because it's beautiful, by the way. You should go by Michael's. It's kind of a fixture, an institution in that area of the city. But some of you may remember that 13 months ago there was a fire there, and did a lot of damage. And somebody set the fire, and there was some concern about whether people were in there. The fire department responded and did a great job, and they doused the fire, and now after 13 months, they have now reopened stronger than ever. And it was great to see not only just the fire department, but also two of the firefighters who were on scene and can describe exactly what happened during that fire. And the folks at Michael's, all the way up to the regional level, were very touched that they had the fire department out there at their reopening. Jay Humphrey, I agree with you about Adams. Adams is looking great. I think I spent half my life on Adams, so it's important to have it nice. Thank you to the Public Works Department, but also thank you for the patience of the residents and the business owners, because when you have a large project like that, it always has impacts. And people have been very patient, and I've gotten some good feedback on the work, even though it's not finished. Regarding a couple of consent calendar items, which I'm not going to pull, there are two items that pertain to the fire department ambulance transport system. And I read I can't remember which numbers they were, but it really makes me feel good that that program is going so smoothly, and that we're happy with the vendors. And I read in one of these budget reports that since we enacted this ambulance transport system, we've had $22 million in revenue, and we provided better service to our community as a result of that. So I think that that's a win-win-win all the way around. And thank you to Chief Stefano and everybody in the fire and rescue department for running that program so competently and well for the community. July 3rd, it will be right here. It's coming up. As a matter of fact, what's today, June 4th? So it's less than a month away. The Tijuana Dogs are getting ready, and the fireworks are going to be here. It's going to be great. It's going to be free as always, over at the fairgrounds. Free parking, free admission, lots of giveaways. I talked to the Steve Cathy of the Fire Association. They're getting their hot dogs ready. Maybe we'll get, I think we're going to get ice cream sandwiches from Senator Josh Newman. It's going to be a lot of fun, so please come out. Everybody's invited. Invite your friends from other cities too. Let's have a great time. And then, let's see if I got anything else. Oh, one other thing from the consent calendar items. I noticed that the Public Works Department put together their M2 or Measure M2 reports that are going to go to OCTA. And I just want to commend the Public Works Department. We've got a great reputation at OCTA. It's a lot of work to put that together, and I'm sure it's just going to get voted through as it should. But that consent calendar item represents a tremendous amount of effort on behalf of our Public Works Department. And I can tell you that the OCTA and various people there, including auditors, look at those very carefully. So they're under a lot of scrutiny, and the Public Works Department works really hard on that. I appreciate that. And then finally, Pride Month, happy Pride Month, and I'm happy that we're flying the flag. There's a lot of stuff happening at Strut, the nightclub. I don't have it written down, but go to their website, and they have a new bar there. And of course, they have the nightclub, and that's the place to be in Costa Mesa and in Orange County during Pride Month. One last thing, I don't know if I'm scooping anything by telling you this, but we are working with Pride Orange County on bringing a major Pride event, not during now, but in October of this year, in connection with the fairgrounds. So keep your eyes open for that. That's all I have. So now we'll go to Ms. Farrell Harrison for the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have anything this evening.
Excellent. And the city attorney.
I only want to wish a happy Pride Month to all my friends, family, and the members of the public.
All right, then what I'd like to do is make a motion. Oh, sorry, let's do the consent calendar before we do that. Can I get a motion on anything pulled from the consent calendar?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the member of the public has pulled item number 10.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, let's get a motion on the balance. Motion by Councilmember Reynolds, seconded by Councilmember Chavez. Let's call for the question.
Oops, hold on. Okay. Are you able to vote now?
Do we need to do the motion again?
Hold on just, yes, please, if you could.
Okay, Councilmember Reynolds, can you push the motion again? And Councilmember Chavez, now can we call for the question? Yeah, it seems to be working.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, good. So then let's hear consent calendar item number 10. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title?
Yes, this is resolution adopting a list of projects for fiscal year 2024-25 funded by Senate Bill 1, the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017. And again, a member of the public has pulled this.
Excellent. Let's open it up to public comment.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I just wanted to quickly, for this item, say thank you to the Public Works Department and thank you to all of you for continuing to support active transportation. I see here that these three projects will incorporate the active transportation plan into these projects. So I'm very excited to see once those projects go through how they will implement that. I did want to quickly note that in the resolution, in the project description, it does mention Fairview Road as the road that will be improved with active transportation improvements and not the three listed roads. So I would just recommend an amendment to that to say the three listed roads instead of Fairview Road. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's close public comment in the chambers. Anybody on Zoom?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Close public comment. Let's have a motion. Motion by Councilmember Reynolds.
Yeah, move staff recommendation with that correction if needed. Second.
Okay, excellent. Any comments?
Nope.
Okay, let's call for the question.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right, now I'm ready to make my motion to move, because it's before 7, so I want to move new business item number 1 up. If I can get a second, we'll take a vote on that. That way we don't have to take a break.
I'll second.
Okay, let's call for the question.
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Councilmember Chavez and Reynolds, please. Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, let's do new business item number 1. Please read the title.
This is adoption of the memorandum of understanding between the City of Costa Mesa and the Costa Mesa Fire Management Association and the adoption of accompanying salary resolution for CMFMA. Presentation by Ms. Lee, Human Resources Manager.
All right, Ms. Lee, good news, bad news. You get to go first. Is that good news or bad news?
It's good.
Okay. All right, you have the floor.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Tonight we bring forth the adoption of the 2024-2027 Memorandum of Understanding for the Costa Mesa Firefighters Association. or Fire Management Association, excuse me. Just a little bit of background, the previous MOU and side letters covered years 2017 to 2024 and is scheduled to expire on June 30th, 2024. In January of this year, CMFMA requested to commence negotiations in advance of the contract expiration date. Labor and key management personnel met in good faith and are proposing amendments to the MOU for your consideration and approval tonight. The key provisions of the negotiated CMFMU include a 3-year term from July 1, 2024 to June 30th, 2027, salary and wage increases of 5% effective July 2024, which reflects a net of a 3.75% due to the increased PERS pickup, 3.75% increase effective July 2025, and a 3.75 increase effective July 2026. The retirement contributions reflects a 1.25 increase in the employee classic retirement contribution effective July 2024, resulting in a 17% employee classic contribution, an increase from the current 15.75%. Recruitment and retention pay of 7.5% incentive for 20 years effective July 2024, 5% for 15 years effective July 25, 2.5% incentive for 10 years of sworn service effective January 2026, with the maximum of 10 years of service from other agencies. And an update to the education pay and certification pay, which involves an addition of education pay of 2.5% and includes additional certifications as part of the certification program with no increase to the current maximum benefit. And these negotiated provisions are in line with the Costa Mesa Firefighters Association. Fiscal impact analysis were prepared, certified, and posted pursuant to the Transparency and Labor Negotiations Policy. The annual fiscal impact starts at fiscal year 24-25 at $121,796 for a 3-year cumulative impact of $227,508. Recommendations for today include improve and adopt the Memorandum of Understanding between the City and CMFMA, adopt a resolution revising the pay ranges for CMFMA, authorize the city manager and the city's negotiation team to execute the MOU documents and appropriate into the respective departmental budgets, and proposed MOU and salary range adjustments support the city's strategic plan goals to recruit and retain high-quality staff and strengthen the public safety and improve the quality of life. And staff is available to answer any questions you may have on this item.
Does council have any questions? Councilmember Marr, you had your thing on this 3 things. Okay, good. We'll open it up for public comment. Anybody on Zoom?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Close public comment. Motion, please. Councilmember Marr has a motion,
Move to approve the item.
seconded by Chavez.
Correct.
Any comments on the motion?
Yeah, I'll just say the reason, for those of you who aren't aware, that council doesn't have a lot of comments or questions about this one. It's been discussed in depth during closed session with our attorneys, with staff. And so, this is an agreement that makes sense. It's very much in keeping with the other agreements that we've signed for various bargaining groups over the last couple of years. And so thank you to the Management Association for being easy to work with and getting this done in short order. I think it's a very fair agreement and happy to support it.
Ditto.
Yes, I agree. Totally supportive. And also just thank you. This is not just the Fire Management Association, but this is just another one of a string of very cooperative negotiations throughout all of our labor associations. So thank you to everybody, and thank you to the city management for that as well. Okay, let's call for the question.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, good. Okay, well, we're not supposed to start the other one. Wait, hold on one second. Let me see what I got. Up. Call. Yeah, okay. You can read the item at exactly 7:00.
Business Improvement Area Reauthorization to Levy Annual Assessment. Presentation by Mr. Carr, Assistant to the City Manager.
Mr. Carr, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I will be presenting a couple slides for this next item, and then I'll turn it over to Paulette Lombardi-Fries, President of Travel Costa Mesa.
Great.
So some background. State law mandates specific procedures to be followed in the establishment of a business improvement area, or a BIA, and the levying of a voluntary annual assessment. On May 7th, the City Council adopted a resolution declaring the intention to levy an annual assessment for fiscal year 24-25 and set a public hearing on June 4th, 2024. The city levies a 3% special assessment on 11 participating hotels in Costa Mesa. Participation in the BIA is voluntary. Fiscal year 24-25, the proposed levy is the same amount. It's 3%, where of the 3%, Travel Costa Mesa receives 99% and the city receives 1%. Since 2014, additionally, Travel Costa Mesa has provided funding to the city to support community-wide marketing efforts and community events that attract many visitors to Costa Mesa. Reinstatement of this funding for community events and marketing efforts totals to $164,000. For our recommendations, staff recommends that the City Council conduct a public hearing regarding the BIA reauthorization and levy of the annual assessment for fiscal year 24-25 and adopt a resolution confirming the annual report filed by Travel Costa Mesa and levying an annual assessment for fiscal year 24-25 for the BIA covering certain Costa Mesa hotels and motels. I now invite Ms. Paulette Lombardi-Fries to come up to the podium.
Excellent. Thank you. Good job. Ms. Lombardi-Fries, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It is my pleasure to be here again this year. We have prepared a short video for City Council, which represents the annual report that you all have received back in April. But just in case you haven't thumbed through that, we will play that in just a second. But I just want to share with everybody that the success and growth of Travel Costa Mesa really relies and is directly attributed to strong support that we receive. And there's two people in particular that sit here that have been part of my board meetings for years, and that would be Mayor Stevens as well as our city manager, Lori Ann. They come to our meetings, they ask questions, they fuel creativity with our staff, and that is extremely important to my staff and to the well-being of Travel Costa Mesa as a travel and tourism entity for the city. So I just want to thank both of you again for your time. You both have full-time jobs, but yet you still make it a point to be part of my board meetings, and you're a very important piece of them. So thank you. We had quite a fantastic year. We're not quite done. Couple more weeks left to go. This year, as we get into our summer swing, we are ecstatic that we will be having the Raiders join us and kind of taking over for the Chargers. So we're extremely happy for that. We're happy to talk about, of course, the Orange County Fair that is going to be going on this summer, along with several other things to do within the city of Costa Mesa. New this summer, we're going to be talking to our feeder markets that are fly-in markets into John Wayne. So we're going to go back and talk to our friends in Las Vegas, because obviously that makes sense with our friends, the Raiders. We want to go back and talk to Phoenix more, Dallas as well. We will continue to market to LA, the Inland Empire specifically, but we have not been able really to do that the way that we did prior to COVID. So those markets will be very important for us to continue to drive our leisure transient business. So I just wanted to point that out because this current fiscal year that we're in is going to start the relaunch of that. I would just ask at this point if we can turn on our video. It's about 5 minutes. And again, just a short recap of what we did most of this fiscal year. one thing that I'd love to add. Travel Costa Mesa went back to the U.S. Travel Association's largest trade show in May, and we had not been back to that trade show since 2019. International business is one of the segments that we have held off on for a couple of different reasons. But the first being that that is the last segment that we are trying to get back into the city and back into the state and even, into the country. So we worked with South Coast Plaza on that trade show, specifically shared appointments talking about the city of Costa Mesa and how things have changed so much. But prior to that event in May, we were able to host 25 Chinese travel and tourism representatives, which was the first time we have done that again since 2019. They came out prior to that trade show and spent the night in our city, and we got them for about 24 hours as we had to share them a bit. But that was really encouraging to us, because I can tell you, as we step foot into that territory, Canada and Mexico is pretty much what we are focused in on. And we actually have a couple of programs that are, we're working with Visit California and Brand USA for Canada and specifically Mexico. But China, we were holding back on, quite frankly, because they only have about 34% of their lift right now that come into California, which makes it really difficult for us to promote, our city and the state when everyone's trying to come here, but there's not enough flights. So they're going to Hong Kong, they're going to different locations, and then coming over here to see us. But it was a fantastic experience. We hosted them. We played a video for them, talked about the Orange County Museum of Art, and just some things that they needed to know about as we continue to hopefully welcome them back and see business return. Them specifically, we had a lot of meeting and incentive business with them, but the group that we hosted was more from an individual basis and individual travelers coming here. So it was a great experience. We also welcomed 5 editors from Mexico. They stayed at the Westin, and a little bit of if you will, showing them the city before we went to the trade show, which was held in Los Angeles. So I wanted to share that with you as well. It was a great, great step back into thinking about what we've done and what we need to do as we progress into our next fiscal year. And I am happy to answer any questions at this point in time.
Council, any questions? Yes. Councilmember Reynolds.
Hi, thank you for that presentation. I was curious, when I was looking at the sort of formation of the BIA and the years and the increases in the levy, it looked like it happens sort of every 10 years. So started in 1995, we increased by 1% in 2000, increased by another percent in 2010. So I'm just curious, now that we're in 2024, what the discussion has been about whether there should be another percent increase. Is that something that the market can handle? I'm sure you've discussed it. I'd love to hear, or maybe not. We're 14 years since the past increase.
Yeah, we have. Thank you for bringing that up. In 2019, I was part of a meeting with the Pension and Finance Committee, I believe it was, and I put together a presentation related to how the hotels were doing and what is the difference between what our city charges as it relates to TOT and what a lot of other cities have that is called a T-bid, and ours is called a BIA. We are very reasonable in terms of what that number looks like, so much so that I am sure if we increased that there would be very little pushback as it relates to our competitive set and what they are offering. A percent of increase would mean a tremendous amount of more support for us to get into and to be into that international market constantly, instead of just a pull during the summertime or even those fly-in markets that we've had. We have not brought this up since 2019 as it relates to the board, but that is certainly open for discussion, and I would love to think about that and to come up with how exactly we would spend those funds and what that would look like as it relates to productivity and some key metrics.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, thanks for that response. So I know we've been recovering since 2020 or so, but it sounds like that's something that's prime for your agenda this year to discuss, especially with that international expansion. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And for a question for staff, just I'm curious, is that something that we could just do tonight? I'm not suggesting that we do, but like in terms of the process for it, probably not, right?
No.
Okay. I didn't think so. But I saw how excited Paulette got. Okay. One other question, and Paulette, I had sent you this question when we first got your annual report a couple weeks ago. One of the things that really jumped out at me that some might find exciting, I found a little bit terrifying, is the impending arrival of electric air taxis. Have you found out any more about that? Like, what's the story there?
I
Are we
do
gonna start
not
seeing-
know more.
Okay.
Yes, I
Okay.
do not know more, but I am happy to have a meeting with John Wayne Airport and our friends there to explain that a little bit more and what that looks like, because unfortunately, I do not have specifics on that and what that would look like.
Yeah.
It was
okay.
presented to us during a meeting. I thought, well, that's interesting. But how they're going to execute that and what that entails, we can find out.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about that. I know we have challenges enough as it is with just drones over over our city, so I'm not really sure how air taxis would fly. Last question, and there's so two events that I think you're connected to. The SoCal Cyclocross event that we've had for about 4 or 5 years now. It's become an annual event that certainly draws people in from the Southern California region, maybe a few cross-border folks, and then more recently the Majestic Cycling bike racing event that I think you've been plugged into. Both of those, I think, have real potential to, well, we know they're drawing in people from outside because they're unique sort of niche events. And I think they have, one's already a 2-day event, so people do stay overnight. I think Majestic Cycling anticipates or wants to grow to be a multi-day event. Would there be room in the community-wide marketing budget or elsewise to give those a 5K donation to help those events grow and get a foothold?
You know, I think the best way to assist them is through marketing as it relates to Travel Costa Mesa. So spreading the word from a standpoint of why they would want to come.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, what are they going to do to get here, and talk about the event more, and talk about, specifically with Elfie and the Majestic Cycling. There's a lot of history in that creates a story for us to tell and interest. So that's what I would
That's
pose
where the real value
as,
is.
that's what I think we can do to really help these events grow.
Yeah, and does your budget as is support that kind of engagement?
Yes.
With those, okay.
Yes,
great,
as long as we know, ahead of time and we have time to prepare, that's probably the biggest thing. And taking a look at their site and, maybe some suggestions if they're open to that. And then what does it look like on our site? Is it in the calendar of events? How are we talking about it on social? Things like that can really impact their numbers.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Certainly interested in working with you more on that and seeing those grow. And I'll just, one last note, not a question. I learned from your video that you're also on LinkedIn, so you have one more follower. So always learning something. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more council comments or questions, so let's open it up to the public. Anybody from the public? Nobody's walking up. Anybody on Zoom?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Close public comment. Okay, let's, I'll make a motion for the staff recommendation, seconded by Councilmember Harlan. So thank you very much. It's great, and you're very welcome for my participation on the board, and it's a pleasure to be involved in the board. Travel Costa Mesa does spectacular work and has been doing it for a lot of years, and it's even going to get more intense as we move to the 2028 Olympics. It's going to be exciting, so I look forward to working with you on that. Let's call for the question.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, yeah, of course. Oh, did you want to say something?
Now I will.
Oh, yeah, quick. Yes, and then, well, he was the second, and then you can go.
I do, but after you.
Okay. Well, I just want to say I've always been impressed with Travel Costa Mesa. Obviously, you do excellent work. I remember, and I may have mentioned this once before, I remember driving in Westwood home from work, and a billboard caught my eye. It said, "Foodies eat in Costa Mesa." And I'm like, yes, we do. That's why I want to get home. And that seems like a small reach to Los Angeles, but it is amazing how many people, and my family's in LA, want to come to Costa Mesa specifically for what we offer. So I appreciate all that you do to promote us here.
Yeah, thank you. I think the Mercado Gonzalez opening, for example, was just like a really great opportunity. Walking through that store in the weeks that followed, the number of times I overheard people saying that they were here because they saw it on your Instagram was pretty amazing. So huge success. I do want to echo Councilmember Reynolds' comments. You know, when I first ran for office, raising TOT, looking for opportunities to better fund Travel Costa Mesa, but also to make sure we were on par with our surrounding cities was a big deal to me. I obviously haven't talked about that since the pandemic, so I do think it's something worth looking into, even if it was a 0.5% increase. The other thing that we've had on the back burner for a long time is regulating short-term rentals in the city, with the idea being that if we were to allow them, we would also impose a transient occupancy tax on short-term rentals and treat them just like a hotel in the city. And so as we get a development services manager on board, as we relook at that later this year or next year, I think that needs to be part of the conversation as well, because people do come here and want to stay in alternatives to hotels, and we should be treating them the same way. So thanks for all you do. Super supportive.
Thank you.
Okay, call for the question.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right. Let's move forward then with public hearing number 2.
Thank you. This is first reading of ordinances entitled, An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Costa Mesa approving development agreement DA-20-02 between the City of Costa Mesa and International Asset Management Holding Group, and an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Costa Mesa approving rezone 20-01 to rezone a 15.23 acre site to planned development residential high density and establish a site-specific density of 80 dwelling units per acre and maximum 1,057 units for the property generally located at 1683 Sunflower Avenue, and an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Costa Mesa approving specific plan 20-01, applying zoning standards to a 15.23 acre property rezoned to planned development residential high density with a site-specific density of 80 dwelling units per acre for the property located at 1683 Sunflower Avenue, and a resolution of the City Council of the City of Costa Mesa approving an amendment to a condition of approval of Resolution 2021-55 for One Metro West development located at 1683 Sunflower Avenue. Presentation by Mr. Rodriguez, Planning Manager.
Okay. So before you go, Mr. Rodriguez, I want to call for any ex-party communications from the council. Let's start with Councilmember Reynolds and just move across.
I have none for a year, I think. Yeah, nothing recently.
I'm not sure. What is, that's a good question. What is the period? Is it, this, it goes back to, my first conversation was like 2016.
Since the last time this item came before us.
Yeah, I'll say no substantive conversations since the last time this item came before us. Yeah, thanks.
When was that? Was that the 2021?
2021.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yes, but not on this topic. So,
Yes.
I guess not.
I have.
Yeah, I've spoken to the applicant about this item since 2021 for sure.
I have as well.
Nothing to report.
Okay, we did that. So now the process will be like we usually do for applications. We're going to have the staff is going to go for first and make a presentation. The applicant will have an opportunity to make a presentation. We'll be able to ask, City Council would ask questions of the staff and applicant at that time. Then we'll do public comment. The applicant can come up after and make any rebuttals, not to repeat what they said before, but to make any rebuttals to what was said during public comment. And then, then we'll make a motion and do what we do. So first up is Mr. Rodriguez with his staff report.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council members. I am Bill Rodriguez. I'm joined tonight by Amber Gregg here at the staff table. We'll be giving you a brief presentation on the One Metro West applications. By way of a quick background, this project was approved by the City Council on July 20th of 2021. It is a residential project located in the north side of the 405 freeway, kind of along Sunflower. It consists of 1,057 residential units, 106 of which will be affordable. The affordable units are divided into 67 units for very low-income households and 39 for low-income households. In addition to the residential component of the project, there is 25,000 square feet of a commercial office building on the property, 6,000 square feet of specialty retail, and a 1.5 acre publicly accessible private park. The project itself is a 15.23 acre parcel of land. It is currently improved with an approximate 345,000 square foot warehouse building located at the near the intersection of Sunflower and Cadillac north of the 405 freeway. Bird's eye perspective of the site that was approved back in July of 21 looks like this. It does consist of 3 different residential buildings, each of which will have some recreational amenities. You can see here some are located on the rooftop building C, for example. There's also an internal street network. And over on the right-hand corner, you can see the 1.5 acre park, and up again, or behind it, but up against the freeway, there is the 52-foot tall, 25,000 square foot commercial building. The project itself will also include some upgrades to Sunflower so that it incorporates more of an active transportation sort of look to it. There will be a bike path that is separated from the travel lanes. So in terms of the application that's before you this evening, Rose Equities, on behalf of the property owner, is requesting to amend 3 elements of the project's approvals. The first is a modification to the development agreement that would amend the timing of payment of impact fees and community benefits funding for the project. There was also a proposed modification to the ordinances that were adopted by the City Council to make them more consistent with Article 22 of the Zoning Code. That would reflect a current or more current approval date. And then finally, there is a request to modify the condition of approval relative to the timing of the artwork submittal to the city. The artwork for the project I'll describe in another slide, but it's located on the parking structure that does front the 405 freeway. In terms of the development agreement amendment, what was approved by the City Council was a one-time upfront payment of just over $16 million to the city. The applicant is now proposing to divide that into 2 payments. There would be a payment in year 1 totaling just over $8 million, and then a second payment 5 years later, which would accrue at a 3% interest rate, resulting at that point in time another $9.8 million being paid to the city, such that at the end of the 5-year period, the city would realize $17.8 million in fees that are paid. The artwork condition, as you can see here on this graphic, there was a conceptual artwork idea along the 405 freeway, but there is a requirement for the project to install some type of artwork. The artwork does need to go to be approved by the city. The applicant had requested modifications to the approval such that the Arts Commission would be the final approving body. Also, that the requirement for vertical landscaping to be incorporated be eliminated. Their thought was that would open up more opportunities for them. Doesn't necessarily preclude the opportunity to incorporate vertical landscaping on the parking structure, but they just didn't want to have the obligation to provide it. They wanted to be as creative as they possibly could be. And then finally, the applicant's request is to revise the timing of when that art design needs to be submitted to the city for its review and approval. So the Planning Commission on May 13th of this year reviewed the application, and at that point in time, they felt that they should remain as the final approval body for the design of the artwork. The Planning Commission also wanted to maintain a requirement that vertical landscaping be incorporated into the overall design. But they were okay with modifying the submittal date of the design to the city such that it's no longer tied to prior to building occupancy as the applicant was requesting, but that it would be required to be submitted prior to the issuance of the first structural building permit by the city. After the Planning Commission meeting on May 20th of 2024, the applicant submitted a letter requesting that the City Council consider giving the Planning Commission greater flexibility concerning the vertical landscaping. The language proposed by the applicant is shown in bold and highlighted or underlined text here. The belief being that this language would allow the Arts Commission and/or the Planning Commission the option to allow vertical landscaping on that parking structure if and where deemed appropriate. So with that summary of the requests of the applicant's proposed modifications to the entitlement documents, the Planning Commission ended up recommending to the City Council that they find that the project is within the previous CEQA review, which was an environmental impact report, and that the council introduced for first reading ordinances amending the development agreement and clarifying the project's effective approval dates, as well as approving a resolution that would modify the artwork condition. So with that, I will conclude my remarks, and Amber and I are here to answer any questions that you may have. I believe that the applicant is also in the audience if you have questions for them. Thank you for your time.
Okay, now it's the time to give the floor to the applicant if the applicant wishes to say anything, and then we'll ask staff and the applicant questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Mayor Pro Tem, council members, thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and community, again, I appreciate the time that was afforded to us. My name is Brent Stahl. I'm a partner at Rose Equities and the director of the One Metro West community. The first thing I want to kind of recognize is on the staff report and the agenda item, it references the property owners being International Asset Management. That is a remainder of the original application. We're now the owners of the property. I want to provide that clarification. The items before you today represent the culmination of nearly 12 years of effort within the Costa Mesa community and 6 years since the first application to city staff. I want to first thank the staff for their work over the last 6 years. As you know, very little housing has been approved in Costa Mesa over the last 8 years, and lack of housing is at the core of so many of society's issues. And while you as a council has recognized that these challenges, the process to building new housing is not easy. The approval of the items before you will result in significant new housing to be built and occupied in Costa Mesa over the next 5 to 10 years. The items in front of you fall into two categories. First, the cleanup of the development agreement and conditions of approval, both of which were requested during the 2021 approval process, but were inadvertently not finalized. Second, the cleanup of the approvals based on new language brought on by the successful Measure K vote. For the development agreement, the request is to address unsustainable upfront costs for the first phase of the project. Multi-phase projects such as One Metro West require thoughtful thinking and management as it relates to upfront costs and timing. The proposal in front of you today prudently distributes some of the costs over time. Meanwhile, it affords the community still significant community benefits during phase one. These include $10 to $15 million of public open space and improvements to Sunflower, $8 million of fees and development exactions, and real affordable housing, about 40 units in the first phase as a part of 106 total units as a part of the entire project. This type of phase proposal is always smart for a multi-phase project like One Metro West, and even more so given the current economic environment. Nearly all market rate development has stopped. It is not only just pertinent in general, but is especially pertinent given today's economic times. The request to clean up the language within the condition of approval does two things. One, it clarifies the process for the art facility along the 405, and two, provides flexibility in the design. We think these requests are reasonable and, more than anything else, clarify the process. The final item in front of you today is the cleanup of the approvals resulting in the successful Measure Y vote from November of 2022. We look forward to moving this project along, including submittal of our construction drawings, securing our building permits, followed by demolition and construction late next year. In conclusion, the items in front of you today represent a significant step forward in not only bringing new, high-quality, market-rate, and affordable housing to Costa Mesa, but to bring the city into compliance with the state and its obligated 2021-2029 housing element process. I look forward to answering any questions you may have, and thank you.
Okay, now it's time for a council to ask any questions of either staff or the applicant. Do we have any questions? Okay. All right, good. Then we'll, oh, sorry, Councilmember Reynolds? Yes.
No one else does. Okay. Question for the applicant first. Can you describe, you mentioned briefly projected timing, if you get approvals here and there's no economic surprises or other surprises. Can you just talk through a little bit more in detail your planned sort of phasing and scheduling for the different buildings?
Yeah, obviously economics depending.
Yeah. So
and
what would be the fastest schedule, right? Assuming there's no
The
surprises.
fastest schedule would be to start some construction drawings in the very near term. That process, we're estimating sometimes it's as low as 9 months, sometimes as long as 15 months. So we're really to the end of next year by the time we have the opportunity to demo and start construction. For the time to build, I used to say we used to build stuff between 28 and 30 months before COVID. COVID's changed that. It got significantly longer. We're starting to get improvements on that. So figure 2.5, 3 years to build. And that'll begin with phase one as it stands today. I don't think we would do multiple phases as it stands. The result would be building A, approximately 400 units plus or minus, the improvements to Sunflower and the improvements to the park and the bike path to the Santa Ana River Trail. We tend to, I mean, again, assuming we did each project through, or each building through subsequent or consecutive phases, it'd be another 2.5, 3 years for each phase. So if you take the worst of that, you have three times 36 or 9 years.
So for the first 9 to 15 months, you said it would take you probably to the end of 2025 to get the plans done, if I understood that correctly. And does that coincides with the timing of the building permit issuance, right? Because I think there's some...
Yeah. So it takes us 6 months to prepare the plans, takes 3 to 6 months to go through the city. And, sometimes you add another 3 months either before. I mean, it just depends how fast we can get through the city. So, and
Okay.
it's been a while since we were speaking with the building department, and it's been a while since we've done a project like this. So we're trying to figure out the best way forward.
Okay. And then just a confirmation from staff, there's some of the recommendations anchor, fees or future decisions on the issuance of the first building permit. So according to that timing, that we would expect that end of 2025?
That's correct.
That's, okay. I just wanna make sure I'm lining up.
Before we pull the first permit.
Got it. Okay. And then one of the other anchor points in the recommendations is certificate of occupancy, I think. And so that would be the end of construction when everything else is inspected and so on. You said that would be probably 3 years.
Are you talking about
that.
the second item and the second payment of the fees within the development agreement? Is that what you're referring to?
What was anchored to? No. That's the 5 year in the proposal.
Yeah, that's the 5 year. Yeah.
So for staff, wasn't there? Isn't the recommendation around the art related to occupancy? What's the second anchor point?
So if you look at this slide, the third bullet point from the top, the applicant's request was to revise the art design submittal prior to building occupancy, but that was not a recommendation forwarded to the City Council by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission, if you look at the third bullet or the last bullet point on this slide, their recommendation was that the submittal date be prior to the first structural building permit issuance.
So that would be,
So-
thank you for that clarification. I was just trying to think of the 2 points. So that would be
Correct.
coincide with that first permit end of 2025
Correct.
at earliest.
Yeah, the first building permit. So demo, horizontal site work, stuff like that can still be going forward.
Okay, that's helpful. And then for Mr. Rodriguez, on slide 9, when you were giving your presentation, I think the words you read were slightly different than on the text here. You said this part that's in bold and underlined, you read if and where appropriate, but I'm seeing where appropriate, right? So this recommendation is still,
Correct. Yes.
landscaping must be involved.
The language you see on
Okay.
the screen is the recommendation.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, okay. Okay. And then we've gotten a number of emails quoting 108 feet tall. In the plans that you showed, the maximum height, I think I saw was 98 feet. Not a huge difference, but I just want to make sure I'm not missing something. Is 98 feet is the highest building, and that's the furthest one from the freeway, correct?
Correct, yeah. So the building heights range from 78 feet to 98 feet. Each one has a slightly different height, but 98 feet is the maximum height that would be constructed out there.
Okay. And do you have the elevations handy? I should have asked for you to prepare for that. Maybe that's something we can pull up
This
after.
This
I'm sorry,
image-
I had earlier today asked Scott Dropkin for elevations, just to, I know one of the areas of comments we've gotten is the questions about, how this will affect people's viewpoints from certain areas. Do we have that deck handy?
I don't have those slides
Okay,
available.
is that something that we could pull up? We could come back to that after public comment, but I think that would be helpful to see. Okay. You just have paper versions? Yeah. Does this thing work? And the reason I'm asking for this, I think it's helpful to revisit, what the projected view changes might be. There's a small section in the Mesa Verde areas that would have impacted views, and I think that for me it certainly influences my thinking about the whether this should go just to the Arts Commission or the Planning Commission, and that follow-up review. There it is. So I think you can put, Scott, the paper copies down here. I know it's been years since we've used this one. And if you could show maybe first the streets that do have where the view would be, I think it was defined as who has a view beyond the 16-foot block wall.
That's not it.
I'll try to pull up the specific slides.
Amber, that's it.
So maybe it's called page 1, study area overview. This is the one that says 82 single-family homes that can see over the sound wall. Yeah, I mean, that's one I would want to get to. Could you, so there's page 1 from that same deck. Page 1, page 5, and then I think this one, I think are the ones that, maybe 1, 5, 6 and this one, are just helpful in shaping the discussion concerning impacted views.
Just to clarify, what's the source of these renderings and elevations?
This is what I received from, maybe, Scott, maybe you can answer that.
So with the original master plan approval, these were part of the view shed analysis that were approved with the project?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh gosh, so it's kind of hard to see. I don't know if we can zoom in. Yeah, so I'll describe what this is showing. Then again, I'm bringing this up because I think it's helpful in thinking about the residents who would see the project over the 405. So it's hard to see the streets here, but there's the sort of the blue shaded area, in this analysis. Those are the neighbors that would have some view over the 16-foot sound wall on the 405. So outside of the area, the analysis is saying that views, you wouldn't see the building, is what I understood. If you go to slide 5, thank you, Brenda. Yeah, so this is showing, you see the arrows on the left. Those point to balloons, which show the height of the building, projected height of the building, based on the plans from the viewpoints shown in the lower right corner. So for these, again, it's a small area, but that is a pretty significant view impact for homes that are in the areas noted 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the lower right. And then if you go to the next slide. Thank you. I'm sorry, 5.
You want to go back to 5?
Were we just on 5?
Yeah, you were just on 5. This is
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so 6 then shows, these are areas where much less impacted views. So you can see, like if one, those houses had a tree in their backyard, you probably wouldn't see the building at all. And then the last one you showed, I think, was slide 14. That's probably the most impacted view, which from my perspective is pretty substantial. So yeah, anyways, I wanted to bring this up because it was helpful to revisit these views as we think about what that art might look like, any parameters around the art, and appropriate public review of what that side of the facade would look like. So thank you for sharing that.
Okay, council, yes. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, just 1 or 2 questions. So, Mr. Stoll, what's the sequence of the construction by building? Is it A, then B, then C?
So the way that the current design is A, B, and C, but the reality is B and C could be switched without any challenges.
Okay, so A is the first building, the one fronting the freeway.
Freeway, that's correct.
Okay. And as far as the art and vertical landscaping, yeah, obviously you don't have a plan for that right now, but when would be the earliest that Building A would be constructed to actually accommodate some art structure? How many years are we looking at?
So the structure would go up, in that first year, in terms of finalizing the structure with all of the emergency requirements and the art facilities. It could be as long as towards the end of it for C of O. So we haven't talked about the implementation of the art facility yet.
Okay. All right, that's all.
I think the design will affect some of that too, depending upon how much it's included in the existing structure or not.
Councilmember Mar?
Yeah, I wanted to turn to the development agreement amendments. I think there's a couple things I wanted to make sure that we were conveying to the public. So for staff, my understanding is some of the motivation for this is the fact that this is being developed in phases, and that many of our surrounding cities do not require all of the phases development fees to be paid up front. And so this is an attempt to be kind of more in keeping with what other cities are doing. Is that right? Am I saying that correctly?
Thank you, Councilmember Mar.
So yes, instead of having to pay them all up front before any funds can come in to the applicant, then this would divide that into two, and then it's less of a financial burden on the applicant to do it that way.
So, and then with the 3% interest rate, we're essentially making up the cost of money from not having all of that be paid at one time. Is that the thought?
That's correct. It's to maintain the net present value of the funds as opposed to getting them up front in year one.
Okay. And is this essentially subject to discussion tonight? Or if we were to make any changes to this table, would we have to go back to the drawing board with the applicant?
Of course, the development agreement is up for your consideration tonight to make any recommendations based on that. But most likely the applicant would want to consider those requests and come back at a later date, but I would defer to the applicant for that.
Okay, thank you. With regards to sorry to keep going back to the art, what was Planning Commission's thought process that they wanted to see what it looked like sooner than occupancy?
So the thought process on that one is that they felt that it was going to be too late into the design process in order to condition it with a certificate of occupancy. By that time, the building's already designed, it's built, and the art becomes an afterthought at that point in time. So they felt that if the applicant could go forward with the demolition as well as the grading permits, that would give them enough time to submit along with the building permits. And then that way, the art could be complementary to the design of the building.
So is there a scenario in which we would hold up issuance of the building permit because we hadn't approved the art yet?
So the way that the condition reads is that it's required to be submitted by the time they pull the first one.
But
not that it's required to be approved.
Understood. Okay. And did I understand? Yeah, the Arts Commission is to be the final approval. Okay. All right. Those are my questions for now. Thank you.
My only question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You had another, I just want to ask this one. Regarding this, where we're at right now, we've got the Planning Commission approval, and then we have the item which is on slide 9, which is this additional phrase that I guess has been crafted by someone in response to the letter that we have here at attachment 6. So if we add that phrase, is the applicant, are you comfortable with the Planning Commission recommendations?
So our goal is ultimately to have as much flexibility as possible so that when we do go through the process, we can obviously consider vertical landscaping. There's a lot of projects out there that have great vertical landscaping. I've never seen it on a parking garage, but the idea is to give this facade, this palette to artists and architects and see what they can come up with. So the goal is to be as flexible as possible. I know there was a discussion during the reason this item came up is during Planning Commission, one of the chair at the time, Chairman Duracall, had just wanted to make sure that there was something additional added to potentially beautify that. And at the end of the day, it could be beautiful, it could be better, but it also could hinder the other opportunities that could be there. So we're trying to keep that option open, and at the same time provide that flexibility in the event a designer thinks of something else.
Okay, do you think that the language that is displayed here on slide 9 sufficiently addresses the point that you just made?
I think it leaves it more, it leaves it up to the two governing bodies, the Planning Commission and the Arts Commission, and I think there's a potential that you lose some of that flexibility.
Okay, so it leaves it up to the bodies, but you would prefer just to have the discretion be with you, the applicant.
And the art, yeah, I mean, we want to give it to the art community, architects, landscape architects. We want to really give it to, come up with some creative ideas.
Right.
That could very well include vertical landscaping.
So I guess this is a question for staff then. Can somebody, and it's a very rudimentary question that I'm probably the only person that doesn't understand the answer to this in this room, but what is vertical landscaping?
So typically vertical landscaping can be thought of in trees that just is tall landscaping to help break up the facade. So trees, cypresses are good examples of this. Sometimes you could have vines that grow up the side of a building as well.
Right. And so I thought about vines. I didn't think about, I guess, trees are vertical. I could have figured that. Yeah, vines, though, we've had a rough time with vines in Costa Mesa for whatever reason. And maybe there's some horticultural reason, but like, for example, I think it's the Cadillac dealership, we had, many years ago, it might even be before I was on council, they said, we're gonna do vertical landscaping. And if you go to the Cadillac dealership now, you have what do you call it? It's a lattice, and there's nothing that's growing and really to speak of. So you don't have to explain to me why trees are nice, but what's the advantage of having these vines that take, I guess a couple decades to grow? Why would we even want that?
And we don't have to have the vines on there. It could just be limited to trees, but it gives the discretion of the Planning Commission and the Arts Commission to think about that when they're doing it.
Yeah.
And if I could just
Yeah,
add, sometimes
advocate for vines that grow for 20
I'm
years.
not advocating, but sometimes landscape is used as a way to create visual interest for a project without breaking up a building plane or making changes to a facade.
Okay. And by accepting this, so we have three different choices, as I understand it. One is the status quo as it was approved, which required vertical landscaping. The other is, on the other extreme, what the applicant wants is to allow them to make the decision about whether, or just remove the requirement. They can either have it or not have it at
But we still have to get approval from the council.
at their discretion. Hold on one second.
I apologize.
No, it's all right.
I apologize.
It's all right, Mr. Stahl. It's okay. And then, so that's the other thing is, and then the other one, the kind of middle of the road is this language. Am I right? Okay. So now you were going to say something. You still have to be. I cut you off, but you cut me off. I wasn't ready to be interrupted. Go ahead.
I apologize, sir.
No, that's fine.
At the end of the day, what we're requesting still requires approval from Planning Commission and the Arts Commission. So that process involves, especially the Arts Commission, they'll have their view of the types of design, and I assume they probably want some more freedom too to think about it.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it just opens things up a little bit more.
So what's the difference then between, I understand the requirement is the requirement. What's the difference between what the applicant is asking for, which would also require an approval of the Planning Commission and the Arts Commission, and this language? What's the difference?
I think that the difference is that the original language made it mandatory that vertical landscaping would be
Right.
incorporated, and this language makes it optional at the discretion of the approving bodies.
Okay.
So if the artwork that is presented for ultimate review and approval is wonderful unto itself, those bodies might decide that vertical landscaping would actually detract from it and maybe is not appropriate. On
Right.
the other hand, if they felt the incorporation of vertical landscaping would enhance it, they have the ability to ask for it either across the facade or at the base of the building or in strategic locations, whatever might be appropriate to result or to affect the greatest aesthetic benefit to the community and the people traveling on the 405 freeway.
Okay. I don't see a whole lot of difference between what you were asking for in your application or your request, in as much as if you presented something to the Arts Commission that did not have vertical landscaping, the Arts Commission would have discretion to deny it and require vertical landscaping. So, I think we're dancing on the head of a pin here, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay.
At the end of the day, would you like to give me the artists, hey, this is the art, you can go at it, or you really need to probably consider this in case it comes up. Which of the scenarios would you rather give the artists?
Exactly. Either way, though, you could make your case to say, we have an artist that says they want to do this without the vines, throw in some trees, and if you can convince, in this case, the Arts Commission and the Planning Commission, then you're good to go.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, good stuff. Sorry, I thought it was simple. I threw in that vertical landscaping thing. Is everybody cool? Did you have another question, Councilmember Reynolds?
Yeah, just one clarification that struck me with Councilmember Marr's question. So the recommendation from the Planning Commission was art submittal prior to the first building permit. Is it understood and required that the art would need to be obviously approved, but then completed with the building and before occupancy? Or what's the mandate on when the art is built and done?
I think we'd be looking for the art to be installed by the time that the occupancy is issued for that building. Yes.
Okay. And is that, where was that sort of written, or where is that enforceable?
I believe it's in the conditions of approval. Just give me a second to look it up.
Okay, that's fine. I'll look up and find it. Just wanted to see what sets that rule. So it would be a condition. Thanks.
Okay, excellent. Let's hear from the public on this item. Open up the public hearing. Okay, Ms. Ganis, you're the leadoff hitter.
I have a tape that I would like to use to conclude my presentation. I want to make sure before I start that it's ready to go. And then you're ready to turn it on.
Fair enough. Are you guys ready to go and for the final flourish with?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Earlier in the approval process for One Metro West, I made a written request to receive notice as the project progressed. I did not receive notice of this hearing or of the Planning Commission hearing, and I wonder how many other people making similar requests were similarly not noticed. Per Public Resources Code, Section 21166, previous environmental review must be updated upon certain changes in a project or in conditions under which the project is undertaken. For example, changes in the air quality, traffic, aesthetic issues, whatever. When One Metro was approved, it was asserted that impacts on recreation would be insignificant due to project improvements plus the payment of city park fees. But recent inflation and the massive run-up in real estate costs would render those fees inadequate to buy the approximately 10 acres of parkland and improve it, too, to fully mitigate impacts on recreational facilities. Next, was there a formal legal opinion regarding the ex post facto exemption of this project from Measure Y? If so, where can the public obtain a copy of that legal opinion? And even if the legal obligation to put this before the voters could be avoided, I would submit that you have a moral obligation based on assertions made by this council to the public when this was approved. Please roll the tape.
Voting on this, the Measure Y, we're not saying it's not going to go to the voters, but as a precondition to a vote, it has to be approved by the city council. That's in Measure Y. So we can't just punt it off and say, we're not going to take a position. Go voters. It has to be approved by the city council. Otherwise, it's red light. It doesn't go to the voters. So by voting for this motion, it would move forward to Measure Y.
And I do want to add that sort of my intention is, with a favorable vote tonight, is that this project is on the path to a Measure Y vote. I think we've heard a lot of positive response from the community. We've heard a lot of concerns from the community. It's up to the developer to continue to sell the project to our community. And
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening again, Cynthia McDonald, Costa Mesa resident. In 2016, after years of pleading with the City Council for better review and approval procedures of proposed developments in the city of Costa Mesa, a group of residents came together and wrote a ballot measure entitled An Initiative to Give the People of Costa Mesa Control of Their Future. That measure was voted into law by nearly 70% of the electorate in 2022, despite opposition from many residents. This city council hastily wrote Measure K, which barely passed by 22 votes after vote mining efforts by Mayor Stevens. Section 7 of Measure K specifically provides this ordinance shall take effect according to law 10 days after certification of the election at which it is adopted. It does not say the effective date is retroactive to any date. Further, nowhere in Measure K does it say the ordinance modifies any prior entitlements granted to property owners, nor does it say that any condition of approval of any entitlements granted prior to the effective date would be changed to eliminate the need for voter approval of the project. It would be unique if it did, because in the state of California, as in most states, new laws are presumed to operate prospectively. And in reading our laws, there is a general presumption against retroactivity unless the legislating body has plainly stated otherwise. In the case of Measure K, you did not plainly state otherwise. In fact, you stated the complete opposite. Changing the effective date of the ordinances relating to the OMW project does not alter our ordinance under either Measure Y or Measure K, because that ordinance requires voter approval to be changed. Therefore, this project must come to a vote of the people, as plainly stated in the conditions of approval. Those conditions of approval were agreed to by the applicant, including the specific COA requiring the project go to a vote. The city must fulfill its role as a representative of the nearly 70% of the electorate who voted for Measure Y and follow its own ordinance. You must deny the applicant's request for a modification of the COA and require that it bring the project to a vote. To do anything else would violate the law and your duty to the citizens of Costa Mesa. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Diana Denny, and I am a realtor of 35 years and a broker of 25 years. I'm a State Street resident and a homeowner of 21 years. Measure Y was in effect when the City Council approved the OMW project in 2021, which meant a condition of approval was for it to be on the ballot, allowing the voters to be able to vote on it. Along came Measure K. In the last election, Measure K was designed almost specifically, it seems, for this project to go through and to skirt around Measure Y. It was going down in defeat until they cured the votes. Measure K passed by only 22 votes. This is in stark contrast to Measure Y, which passed in a landslide, ensuring we'd be able to vote on these high-density projects one at a time, 7 stories tall and otherwise. Now they're requesting 3 changes, that they make their project be under Measure K, even though it was under Measure Y when it passed the council. Retroactive. I noticed even the planning commissioners at the planning commissioner meeting were asking, has this been passed through legal? There's a reason for that, these questions. Rather than pay all the money up front to the city, they are now wanting to pay now upfront half and half in 5 to 10 years and only 3% interest when government bonds are paying 5%. Is this being a good steward of our money? Would we hand our own personal money this way? They are changing the commitment to the vertical landscape. They want to bypass the Planning Commission input. Look closely at what they did ask, because I saw a lot of confusion going on tonight. Before submitting plans on what will go on the wall. There was a reason that Chair and someone else was adamantly opposed to this, because we aren't just dealing with art for an art council to look at. We're dealing with light, which affects a neighborhood greatly, and it affects the freeway. Removing vertical landscape takes away what is aesthetically pleasing to most, a potential buffer to sound, which is very important, and allows for more wall space to put beaming light into the future, impacting the state streets. Art is subjective. In the putting in the landscape, it's the least controversial and the best option, like the original agreement provided for. A towering 7-story structure will send noise, light, and site pollution far into the Mesa Verde North neighborhood. This means more traffic, 680 trips a day at Harbor and Geisler, more construction for 5 to 10 years. Being a realtor of 35 years and a broker 25, it can take our property values down a lot, in my opinion, making our homes hard to sell that are desirable now to those same buyers that would have purchased now, but not in the future. Is this good for the city and for the people? Why isn't Rose Equities willing and able to put their case to the voters? Why isn't the city council allowing us to vote on this? You're voted in to carry out the will of the people. Be good stewards with the city's money and agreements that are struck. Do what is good and best for the community and honor, measure, why. I ask you to consider the fact that when I canvassed the neighborhood and passed out almost 400 flyers with others on foot, 99% didn't know about this project. And the few that did thought it was going to be on the ballot, measure why. Please understand that there'll be a lot of angry people in the city and the surrounding neighborhoods when they see this just ram through if we don't have a chance to vote on it, as we were told in 2021.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Jay Humphrey, Costa Mesa resident. To not repeat other people already, I thoroughly agree with the last 3 speakers. And I'm going to focus my points at 3%. Good God almighty. I have savings account at 4.5%, and you're going to accept 3% over the next 5 years when inflation alone will eat up the very difference of that. And when we go to build the projects to mitigate the impacts from this project, we won't have the money that would be there in front to be able to pre-build those things. We're going to get stuck with that bill. But further than that, you also are saying, let's put half the money 5 years out. I'm a believer in precedents, and you'll remember, most of you, that there was a project for apartments down at 1501 Newport, and they promised to put 21, I believe. Have we got those? No, we don't. It was in their development, it was in their agreement with the city, but somehow they went bankrupt, and somehow the city did not get that promise fulfilled. There's nothing in the development agreement that actually guarantees that their payment will happen on the 5 years down the road, but there's also nothing that prohibits them from at least building phase 2, i.e. another 400 apartments, done before the 5 years are up. And if you're willing to risk that, that's your policy decision. But it certainly does not protect the people of Costa Mesa from being trapped with not only getting less money for the mitigation, but also for getting far less money and trapped with potential impacts because we allowed them to build and occupy prior to the 5 years for 2 projects. So it can easily be done. You can look at their own time schedule in their master plan. So it can be accomplished because we have no control of the timing of each phase after the first phase. So I hardly disagree with us using A, the 3%, and B, extend that out for 5 years. Fine, attach it to building permits for each of the phases, but do not just give them a blanket 5-year lease ahead of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Scott Smith, 32-year resident of the State Streets on Nebraska Lane. 2021, when I was attending council relative to the first approval of this project, I went away heartened by the fact that I believe that this would go to a Measure Y vote. I stand here tonight disheartened that this council passed and encouraged Measure K to be passed and is now considering not allowing this project to go to a vote of the citizens of Costa Mesa. So I urge you to do the right thing and have the citizens of Costa Mesa vote on this project and determine whether they want this project in our city. I'd also like to say that I agree with Mr. Humphrey. 3%, come on guys, your money is my money. And 3% on giving this developer a break, that's atrocious. You should demand at least more interest if you're going to give him a break at all. 3% is meaningless. And it's not going to, you're going to lose money to inflation. We're all losing money to inflation right now. And now you're going to take action to lose more city money to inflation. That's really not appropriate. So I would encourage you not to approve that at a 3% interest rate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, am I on?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Mike Bantel.
Yeah, you got it. Go ahead.
I've been here for 23 years. I live in the State Streets on Alaska Ave. Thank you, city council members. I was on PTA at the California Elementary. I know how hard this is with managing. I've only done, a small piece, but I'm sure you listen to a lot of different, you have a lot of decisions to make. That's what I'm saying. Also, this is kind of related, but they've already talked about a lot of different things. We've got that. Clear Channel, this was a while ago. Remember when Fountain Valley was putting in that big LED sign? Thank you. I know some of you stood up for that and did that. I know on the, what they're doing, they're putting up artwork here, but at the same time, remember, this is going to be a giant structure that we're putting up. And when this happens, if you're going to do it, you want to do it right, and you really want to think about it, because all the people driving by would hate to see this look like LA, right? I mean, we get bombarded by advertisements, all sorts of stuff, right? Telemarketers and stuff. And this is just another form of, when you're driving. I really like driving through. I appreciate driving on the freeways in Orange County because it's a lot cleaner, easier to see. It's a little bit more relaxing. Anytime you put up big stuff with signs, that's really stressful. If it does go up, definitely, I'd want to hear guarantees that there will be no LED signs and things. The other thing is the whole landscaped wall, this vertical landscape. Some of that was for sound. That's kind of a big deal because when you have concrete, I know some of you have been in Chipotle, right? You have the concrete all around and the echoes, the acoustics. You have walls on both sides of the freeway. And raising this wall, a lot of the sound is going to reflect off some of the walls that goes back and forth. Anyways, sound is a wave, and it can, one of my concerns is we're going to hear it. So in addition to the artwork and making it look nice, this is a whole nother thing that makes it even more challenging, is how do you then reflect the sound or keep the sound from going back over into the neighborhood. And then the other thing is, this project is huge for Costa Mesa. Well, one thing is, I don't know, can people buy these or are they rentals? So I would like to see more ownership in Costa Mesa. And this is like we're taking a footstep, we're fundamentally changing. This is suburbia that we live in now. And now we're going to this slightly higher density housing. And, are we going to end up being, like a mini Miami or something? So it's, do we want to go in this direction? Maybe this should be up to the voters. So something to consider. I mean, maybe this is a small project, but it's going to lead into.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to Zoom.
Thank you. Speaker with phone number ending in 714.
714, you have the floor.
Yes, if you would play that video again, Brenda.
Okay.
Prior to my, thank you.
The voters, but as a precondition to a vote, it has to be approved by the city council. That's in Measure Y. So we can't just punt it off and say we're not going to take a position. Go voters. It has to be approved by the city council. Otherwise, it's red light. It doesn't go to the voters. So by voting for this motion, it would move forward to Measure Y.
And I do want to add that sort of my intention is, with a favorable vote tonight, is that this project is on the path to a Measure Y vote. I think we've heard a lot of positive response from the community. We've heard a lot of concerns from the community. It's up to the developer to continue to sell the project to our community, and
Those words, if you do not vote for the voters to have the right to go to the polls on this project, are total betrayal. In November, the mayor position is up. Maybe the vote should be for the mayor and get someone who cares about the city instead of someone who won't stand by his words. You've heard all of these residents and those that have homes that are going to be greatly affected by this. If this project is as fabulous as you think it is, the voters will vote it in. So it's my belief you don't think it's going to pass the vote because it's just a piece of, can I say crap? If I can, I said it. So don't betray the voters. We have a right to vote on this project. We earned it. We deserve it.
Thank you. Who's the next speaker?
Next speaker is Priscilla.
Priscilla, you have the floor.
Priscilla.
Well, I live on the State Street, and so this is very interesting because I've been talking about this for years. Several months ago, Rose Equities met with you in closed session. Last month, they came to the Planning Commission requesting 3 massive changes to their agreement with the city. Tonight, you will vote on these changes, leading me to believe the fix is in on the sweetheart deal. When we voted you into office, you promised to listen to and represent represent the residents, your constituents, and work on our behalf, be our champions, unlike the previous administration. Instead, in every encounter with billionaire equity firms, developers, and landowners, you take on the mantle of Neville Chamberlain, bending over backwards to appease them and begging for crumbs. Allowing Rose Equities to split their fees to $8 million in year 1 and delay the rest until year 5 with only 3% interest is bad business. My savings account gives me 5%. Anything can happen in 5 years. Why should we trust a private equity firm in the first place? And why set a precedent by rewriting the date of the agreement with One Metro West to bring it under Measure K? This will only result in more lawsuits. Every cannabis shop and sober living home will be suing to have laws and agreements rewritten to their advantage. Lastly, allowing the removal of the pollution mitigating vegetation wall from the 5-story parking structure abutting the freeway is an affront. A living wall will clean the air, muffle sound, and provide a respite from the concrete and billboards. I would rather Costa Mesa's calling card on this massive canvas be more Tree City USA than a questionable mural that won't stand the test of time and ends up mocking the City of the Arts. And by the way, you obviously aren't gardeners, because there are specific plants that are used on freeways to absorb the pollutants. And there are beautiful parking structures with trees and bougainvillea coming down them that do all that needs to be done and are gorgeous. So you just need to do a little research. That the idea of putting some One Metro West says they have another place, I forget the name of it, and they've got this beautiful mural, and it's really not my cup of tea. But give people landscape, give them greenery, and I guarantee you they will prefer that kind of.
Thank you.
No further speakers, Mr. Mayor.
All right, close public comment. So now it's time for the applicant, if you wish, you have no obligation to, but to rebut what was said in public comment.
Yeah, just a couple.
Hold on one second. I got to turn your mic on. There you go.
Thank you for the opportunity to come back here. Just a couple items of clarification. First of all, as it relates to the lights, that are required as a part of our facility. There are standards included in the environmental impact report that we have to abide by, and those were cleared through the CEQA process. So there are specific light standards that both the parking garage and the light facility and the art facility will abide by. In terms of, I heard a lot of discussion here is about the word precedent. I mean, the precedent is, and I think some of the discussions in the other cities, we have multi-phase projects just in the city of Irvine. The precedent is you pay fees by phases. So you have a certain proportion of fees that are paid in the first phase, and then the second proportion of fees are paid on the second phase, et cetera, et cetera. With this particular project, not only are we paying a bunch of upfront infrastructure, but we're also paying everything before the third phase and maybe even before the second phase, depending upon the timing of that phase. So there is a significant win from the city. And to that effect, as it relates to precedent, is this the precedent that is going to be afforded to the Hive? I mean, I don't want to speak for them, but the idea of making this a precedent is going to make it harder for multi-phase projects to come through the city. And lastly, there was a question about closed session. You know, we never attend any closed session meetings, so that's obviously something that the city council does. That's it. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Now, technically, I'm closing the public hearing or public comments. And so now we're just waiting for a motion from anybody, anybody on council. Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to move to approve staff recommendation.
Okay.
Would the maker of a motion consider a friendly amendment?
Of course.
Oh, wait, he needs a second first. Second for discussion.
Happy to hear your ideas. Mr.
Okay,
Mark.
we have a motion and a second, and then you asked for an amendment?
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead. What was the amendment again?
Well, I haven't made it yet. Yeah, so I'd like to request that, consistent with the Planning Commission recommendation, we maintain Planning Commission as the final approval, that we maintain the vertical landscaping requirement, and that we do clarify the art submittal date prior to submittal. So maybe that's doesn't require an amendment, but clarification rather.
I'll accept it.
Thank you.
Okay. Is the maker in the second, are you willing to do what was on page 9 of the slides, where you allow the bodies, which is the Arts Commission and the Planning Commission, to relax the vertical or eliminate the vertical landscaping where appropriate as determined by those two bodies? Would you be willing to add that?
I'll add it.
Second concurs.
Okay, good.
I'm sorry, Mayor, could you repeat that?
Yeah, it's the thing, yeah, it's on 9 on the screen. It's just this language that which shall incorporate vertical landscaping where appropriate as determined by the reviewing body. So that gives the Arts Commission and the Planning Commission the opportunity to not require it at some point in time if they felt like that was in the best interest of the project. Okay, good stuff. So we got a motion, and so Councilmember Chavez, you made the motion, so you have the opportunity to speak to the motion, and then we'll go to the second, and if anybody else has anything.
May I ask just a question, and it may result in asking for an amendment too?
Sure.
Is that,
Go ahead.
Okay. So one of the comments brought up, potential unlikely scenarios, right? Like, what's the chance? We heard the anticipated timeline. I think I recall from watching the Planning Commission that 5 years is pretty short in demolition and construction and permits and so on. But we have in this agreement with the phased payments, first one is very clear with the first building permit. The second one, no later than 5 years. I was thinking that it might be worth suggesting that we say no later than 5 years or before the issuance of all certificate of occupancies, whichever is sooner. just to like have that backstop? I know it's probably very unlikely that everything's built in 5 years, but
I'll add a motion. To your point, it
Yeah.
might be unlikely, but it's still good to show that
Yeah.
we want to get money as fast as possible.
Okay, thanks for understanding the logic. I'm seeing staff maybe kind of shake their head. What I want to do is just have a backstop in the unlikely scenario. But what's your suggestion, understanding that thought process?
If I understand the thought correctly, my recommendation would be to stick with the timeline. I think it's a very defined period of time. It's easily measurable.
Yeah.
When you have a project that's consisting of over 1,000 residential units, you may have phased certificates of occupancy, and there is no guarantee that you're going to get all certificates of occupancy or final certificate, that maybe even that last final certificate of occupancy within this time frame of 5 years or less. I think that having a very clear, defined calendar timeframe works more in your favor in this case.
Is there another timestamp that we could use? And to clarify, I wasn't suggesting changing from the 5 years. It was sort of 5 years or
Sooner.
end of project, whichever is sooner. But what would be that, the right way to define end of project?
I don't see how it would hurt for it to be
Doesn't
whichever
hurt.
is sooner.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
I think the language addition would be fine. I suppose you can ask Mr. Stoll if he's agreeable.
Yeah, and as much as it's an agreement, I saw you, Mr. Stahl, nodding your head. You're okay with this?
Yeah, we're okay with the change.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Very unlikely again, but I think it's just a safety stop.
Is
Yeah.
the maker of the
Okay.
motion?
Is the language clear?
yeah.
The maker of the motion, okay.
Second concurs.
Second concurs. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Yep.
You understand where we're at so far, Madam Clerk? Okay, so we're still working on amendments?
Oh, I would, no.
Okay, good.
Have a
Well, then let's give the maker of the motion a chance to be heard on the motion, and you go second, okay?
I wanted to request that the city attorney address this question of Measure K not being retroactive, but we can wait till after the maker and second make comments if you prefer, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah,
Actually, Ms. Punamar, I think it's maybe prudent to hear it now.
yeah, let's hear it now. That's fine.
Thank you.
All right. This isn't about Measure K being retroactive. We are not doing anything to the prior ordinances and so on that are being replaced by the ordinances before you this evening. These are the ordinances that are being approved. They are being approved under current law, which is Measure K. And I want to clarify, Measure K amended Measure Y. The language of Measure K is incorporated into the same code section that Measure Y is included in. So the voters agreed that including this area, they didn't have to have an individualized vote for developments within those corridors, including this area, that by their vote on Measure K, they were giving that authority to the council. So this is not a retroactive okay of the ordinances adopted in 2021. This is an adoption of ordinances today in 2024 that will be effective now under Measure K. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Okay, now, without further ado, does the maker of the motion like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council, for your good questions and amendments, and thank you everyone in the public for raising your concerns and sharing your thoughts. I'll break it down bit by bit from things I've heard, and then I'll share a little bit about why I think this is necessary in Costa Mesa. First of all, I want to commend Member Reynolds for acknowledging that this property is going to become something residents see in the state streets. I thought it was I appreciated her methodicalness of showing the balloons and where it will appear in people's sight lines. And I commend her for, really setting the tone about us getting final approval on the artwork. It's important to me that whatever we put up on that building is something that's not going to reflect negatively, but enhance those communities that will see it. In regards to the Measure Y comments, thank you, Attorney Barlow, for breaking down that Measure K is an amendment to Measure Y. And the public mentioned it wasn't necessarily one that was the most outright in passing, right? It was a very tight margin. I voted for Measure Y when I was younger, when I was 18. And I realized as I was older, as I grew into my working area, my working age, how much it actually hurt me as a renter and resident of Costa Mesa who've been here my whole life. Measure Y basically meant if you had your place in Costa Mesa that you owned, you were secure, but everyone else had to fight for the scraps because no one else was going to build. What we've seen in the past years since Measure Y is there's been no development at all in Costa Mesa, and yet children keep graduating from our high schools. People keep staying here with their families to the point where my district where I live in West Costa Mesa, the block between Harbor and Placentia, the golf course and 17th Street, has as many people as Mesa Verde, as well as areas north of the 405 in that box. That tells me there's demand and need for housing. Measure K was very targeted in where we were able to put housing, right? It was the corridors and north of the 405. North of the 405 because it was across the freeway where it would be the least impactful of people's daily lives. There is a shift happening where we're going to need to build housing. The state's been very clear that it's requiring cities to build housing. We see our neighbor to our left on the map, Huntington Beach, fighting the state, and we'll see how they deal with the repercussions. But when I see a neighbor to the south, Newport Beach, you know, they're being targeted and putting homes in areas that are not going to impact their current residents. That's what the goal was with Measure K, and that's why I feel comfortable supporting this motion to put this new development across the freeway and not in our own backyards in Costa Mesa, south of the freeway where most of us live. It is going to be a change, but we need this. And the good thing is that it's going to have an extra ecosystem. It's next to SoCo, which is as you guys all know, it's a retail space that direly needs more consumers. I'm willing to bet that within a few years it's being built, we'll see a Ralph's go up there or a Trader Joe's, and people will be walking, getting groceries, not crossing the freeway. So while there is trepidation, and I acknowledge everyone's concerns, I think this is the best place to build housing. I think we're doing our best as a council to address your concerns, so making sure we have final say on the height, making sure we have control of how it looks like. And for those reasons, I'm happy to make this motion.
Let's hear from the second.
I don't know how I follow that. That was very well said and very much in keeping with my thought process. I've been supportive of this project. I think the reality is that if you prioritize housing, if you care about housing and talk about housing as much as I do, that will mean more density. I think we're getting 100 units of affordable housing as part of this development agreement, which is more housing, frankly, more affordable housing than has been built in the last 10 years. And Measure K did go to the voters, and it passed. You may not have liked how much it passed by, but just like the last general election in this country, there's passing and not passing, and it's pretty binary whether something got across the finish line or not. And lastly, I just feel compelled, I probably don't need to say this, but I feel compelled to dismiss the notion that something nefarious was happening with ballot curing. In fact, most ballots that were cured were ones that were signed by folks who were seniors or who were disabled. And so they needed another chance to write their signature out in a way that looked more like their driver's license. It is part of an election to make sure that everyone has a fair shot, to make sure their ballot is counted. That's what ballot curing is. And whether that resulted in Measure K getting across the finish line or not, the fact is that those were people's actual votes that needed to count. So anyway, yeah, happy to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other council member want to be heard? We'll go. Why don't we leave you? You get to go second to last. Councilmember Reynolds, if you wish to be heard.
Yeah, I want to echo everything that's been said, but do want to speak because I know this is a big decision for a lot of people who will be impacted by the visuals. It's why I wanted to bring up the visuals and kind of revisit that myself. That certainly influenced how I was thinking about the artwork coming back to both Arts Commission and Planning Commission. The sort of big picture reasons for supporting this project are similar to what you've heard from my colleagues on the dais here. In the last few years, we've really been drilling down on the acute challenge of housing affordability in the city. It's affecting every age group, and it's affecting the economic growth and future of our city because businesses can't come to Costa Mesa because their workers can't afford to live here as well. So it's a major issue. It's been our focal point for the last few years. It will continue to be our focal point probably for a long while, but certainly for the next couple years. And this project provides over 1,000 units of housing, including over 100 units of affordable housing, including 39 units of, or 67 units of very low income housing. So addressing one of our most acute needs. I also think a lot about public park space in our city. We've got a deficit of public park space. This project provides 1.5 acres of professionally managed public park space that's going to be accessible to everybody, walkable to folks who are going to see the visuals of this project. So that's a benefit for a lot of people. I think that will be a benefit that many people in the nearby neighborhood will enjoy. You'll be able to walk up the river trail to a park where there's, I think it's going to be programmed. There's also a community center there where the city will have meetings, and there will be local retail. It's going to create a, kind of like a little mini downtown. I think that's, some may be skeptical about that, some may be excited about that. I really do believe that's going to be a big benefit for a lot of people. I take the visuals very seriously. That's a big change. And so I'm glad that we have the process for that to come back. Certainly my expectation is that there is very serious consideration on light. I think that's in the conditions, and certainly on sound, which I know staff will be looking at carefully, and I know planning commissioners certainly will be looking at carefully too. It's a big decision. This project was sort of on the ballot in 2024. I think a lot of people understood that this would likely come with Measure K. Measure K was about building housing, dense housing. And so I'm excited about it. I totally understand if folks are nervous about it. I do think it's going to be a really positive thing for the city. Thank you.
Councilmember Gameros?
I will take a shot at this. Thank you. So I just want to commend staff on the time that they've spent on this. I know that there's a lot of regard to how this is going to impact the community. I understand that there could be some visual blockage from the residents' views. But one of the things that I've looked at, and approximately 243 feet from the nearest residence is the distance across the freeway. That's the setback. At about 80 feet high, we're looking at about a 30-degree view of blockage. It's not 45, it's not 60. You're not going to have to look straight up. You'll easily be able to have a great view still, and you're going to see a beautiful structure that you'll have access to. This is going to beautify the community. This is not going to be some shady structure. It's going to be a nice place for people to move to, people to live, and for people to work. And there's an opportunity close by, whether you want to shake your head at it or not, that's going to have a live, work, play opportunity for those people that want to live there. I know that most of the staff that work here can't afford to live here. I can tell you right now that most of the people here now that bought their homes 20 years ago wouldn't be able to afford to live here. Whether it's funny to you or not, or whether you don't agree with me, you don't have to, but that's the truth. So I want to commend One Metro West for putting it out there and taking the risk, because there's been a lot out there. They're putting a lot of money out there, and they're going to do the best that they can. I've had a lot of insight on this, and I believe in this project too. So I think that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank my colleagues. I really have a hard time adding to this conversation. I mean, you've covered all the merits of the project and the process, and said that very eloquently, especially Councilmember Chavez. I think you really did encapsulate what a lot of us feel about this. I'm pleased to support this motion largely because it's the culmination of us talking about housing. We've been doing this for years at this point, and we've put a lot of effort into housing, not just policy, but trying to get projects built. And I want to recognize that for some people, if this project just went away, the applicant sold the property, moved, they'd be perfectly happy, perfectly comfortable. And in some cases, they'd probably think that was a win for the community. I certainly have another opinion about that. But I think what this does say about the applicant is a commitment to this community. Many developers would just cut and run, especially after going through a pandemic. And the fact that they're still here and we have a project that's before us that I think meets everything that we are looking for gives me a lot of confidence that this is going to be an asset for our community. I've had too many conversations with my kids who are 17 and 20 about how expensive it is to live here. They shouldn't be thinking about that. They're high schoolers, college students. They should be thinking about what they want to do with their life, enjoying that moment. But they recognize the reality that coming back to live here is way too expensive. And I think we have a moral obligation to try and do something about that. So I'm pleased to support this motion tonight.
All right. Well, everybody has said a lot of stuff. I just want to, I'm going to reiterate some things, and just because I want to explain my personal vote and what's going on in my head. So housing is important. The fact of the matter is, it's so important that the cost of housing is breaking up families. It's creating homelessness. It's creating all kinds of pain in our community. And the only way to address that problem in a sustainable way is to build more homes. And One Metro West, in point of fact, is the only developer who is likely to build any substantial amount of homes in the next 5 to 10 years. And it's going to happen here. We've talked many times and spent a lot of council and staff and community time on our affordable housing ordinance. You may remember that. This project will yield 106 deed-restricted, low-income and very low-income homes. It will provide, in addition to park impact fees, it will provide the first park that's been built in the city of Costa Mesa in many years. I want to say 20 years. I'm not sure about that, but many years in my memory. There are many people that speak very highly of our pavement condition index and our active transportation plans, particularly making it safe to ride bikes and to walk in Costa Mesa. Sunflower, by virtue of this project, will provide very safe ways to bike and walk on a busy street, Sunflower. And as Councilmember Chavez pointed out, it's a good way to get to our current commercial development over at SoCo. And so it'll provide vitality there. It provides a safe and vibrant way to get to the Santa Ana River Trail, and to the beach as well, to the coast. We in Costa Mesa are great at creating jobs. We have places like Anduril, AAA, Experian, El Pollo Loco, South Coast Plaza. But what we've been doing in the last several years is exporting housing so the people who work in our community and work at those jobs that our businesses are so strong at creating have to live somewhere else. This causes a lot of problems, not only problems for the employees, but it also creates an issue with vehicle miles traveled and puts pressure on our climate. So if people are concerned about climate change, this project is helpful to address that. In terms of the payments that we're asking for and the adjustment there, what we're doing is we're aligning the payments to the impacts created by the project, which I think is quite logical and sensible. To the extent that we're charging an interest rate, I keep in mind that we're not a financial institution here at the city of Costa Mesa. We are we're here to address issues such as the ones I brought up with housing, climate change, active transportation, homelessness, and making it a better community. I trust the Arts Commission and the Planning Commission to do the right thing regarding the vertical walls and whatever the vertical landscaping. And that's, somebody said I'm not a gardener, and that's certainly the case. Finally, there were a couple of clips by me and Councilmember Reynolds, and I want to just, it was quite evident on those clips, the date there, June 15th, 2021. And June 15th, 2021, Measure Y was the law. And therefore, what we were voting on was whether to approve the project, and then at that point in time, it would have had to gone under the current law, Measure Y, to the ballot. If it had passed then, we would have come back and we would have had this discussion and passed an ordinance. As the city attorney pointed out, Measure Y is not the law anymore. Measure K is the law. So we, by making this vote and moving forward in the way we were doing, we are abiding by the law passed by the voters, and if we did anything else, we would be violating the law. Therefore, I support the motion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
May I ask for one correction before we take the vote? Mr. Stoll mentioned that there was a change in the name of the property owner, and that name is in several of the ordinances, including the development agreement ordinance, as part of the title. So if the motion could be amended to allow staff to make that correction once we get the confirmed name of the current owner.
I agree.
Second concurs.
Okay, let's call for the question.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, the next item is the budget. Let's take a break, and let's meet back here in at 9:10. Council member. Yes. Uh-oh. We're on the video record right now. Hold on one second. Let's let everybody get settled. All right, good job, council and staff, on getting us to this point. And now we have our last item, which is public hearing number 3. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the title?
Fiscal year 2024-25 proposed operating and capital improvement program and housing authority budget presentation by Ms. Molina, Finance Director.
Thank you. Ms. Molina, you have the floor.
Thank you, dear Honorable Mayor, City Council. It's my pleasure tonight to present to you the fiscal year 24-25 proposed CIP and operating budget public hearing item. Before I start, as always, I'd like to thank multiple people. As you all know, putting a budget together, it takes a village. It takes all the department directors, their analysts, managers, city manager's office, and city council to make sure that we're providing you a financially sustainable budget for the next fiscal year. This year's theme is When We All Pull Together. We will go through the guiding principles, the 24-25 revenue highlights, our proposed expenditures, the status of our general fund reserves, and a budget calendar. As you know, our guiding principles inspire us as we start preparing the next fiscal year's budget, which includes strengthening our public safety and improving our quality of life, diversifying, stabilizing, and increasing housing to reflect community needs, advance environmental sustainability and climate resiliency, recruiting and retaining high-quality staff, and my personal favorite, achieving long-term fiscal sustainability. The new strategic planning goals will be presented to the City Council at an upcoming study session and capital budget overview. This is a structurally balanced budget. The all funds budget is $240 million, a $6 million or 3% increase from the current fiscal year. It's structurally balanced in our general fund. We've designated over 50% of our general fund resources to our public safety. We invested approximately $28 million into our city's parks, streets, and active transportation network and facilities. We created a new $2.5 million housing trust fund to help with the development of affordable housing. We funded $150,000 for our facility needs assessment in our capital improvement fund. We've also funded $300,000 for an open space master plan from available fund balance in the Park Land and Acquisition Fund. We've revised a 5-year CIP budget to include the community gardens for $250,000 starting in fiscal year 27-28 and $50,000 for our bus shelter starting in fiscal year 25-26. I am going to pause a little bit. It looks like I have an old PowerPoint up here, and I'm going to see if I can find the new one. Sorry, it looks like there was an old one that was put on here.
That's okay. Take your time.
Okay, here we go. We've also revised the 5-year CIP. As mentioned, that includes the community gardens and bus shelters. We fully annualized our recently negotiated labor contracts, and we have included the compensation increases for 5 CMCEA classifications per the contract to bring them to market at approximately $222,000. It's a reminder of all of our different funds in the city. We have our general fund, which is essentially our unrestricted fund. We have a multitude of special revenue funds, which are restricted funds for specific expenditures. We have 3 internal service funds, which essentially account for activities that are used within the city, such as equipment replacement fund, self-insurance fund, and IT replacement fund. We also have the capital improvement fund, which is used to track our financial activities that are designated as capital projects. They're about $30,000 and above. That includes staff time. Just as a reminder, our large capital projects normally span over multiple fiscal years. As for our breakdown of our all funds, the general fund comprises of approximately 80% of the total pie, followed by our special revenue funds, our capital projects funds, and then our internal service funds. For the total $240 million, our operating budget increased by approximately 6%, $11.2 million. Our transfers out went down by about $1.9 million, or a 13% reduction. That's essentially a realignment of our equipment replacement transfer of $3.4 million moved up to our operating. And then our capital budget reduced by about $3.2 million, or 10%, mostly due to the one-time grants that were received by the state and the county the current fiscal year. In our recruiting and retaining our high-quality staff, we're requesting a couple of new positions, 1.6 in the general fund, accounting specialist part-time in the finance department. Our police department is requesting to convert an accounting specialist 2 to full-time, and our public works department is requesting a part-time maintenance worker for a total of about $190,000. Some of our other funds, we're essentially realigning some positions in our community outreach workers and code enforcement officer positions for an increase of 1 position for a $107,000 impact. Operating and all funds highlights. In our housing authority, we're transferring $2.5 million from our ARPA for a new housing trust fund to help address housing affordability. We're starting a new transfer of $222,000 from ARPA to continue supporting the tenant eviction protection program. Transferring $231,000 of ARPA to support housing authority for our homeless program funding. We're continuing our general fund transfer of $1.3 million towards our ongoing city's homeless outreach and bridge shelter programs. And we are funding the 15 beds at the permanent bridge shelter for our BAH program. It is important to note here that we are fully committed in ARPA, and the BAH program is only a 2-year program. The city would have to reapply at the end of 2 years. In equipment replacement fund includes an ongoing revenue about $6 million to support our replacement of our fleet, in addition to some staffing, fuel, maintenance, and repairs for our fleet for a total of $6 million. Our police department will be having an additional $1 million for 10 vehicles, 8 police interceptors, and 1 heavy body truck to support the new armored car vehicle, and 1 light truck for animal services. Public Works is proposing to utilize $320,000 for an aerial lift truck for tree trimming and 1 electric pool vehicle. In our Parks and Community Services Department, $220,000 towards 2 large passenger vans, one's for the senior center and the other one's for our youth. The City Manager's Department is requesting 3 new vehicles for our street outreach workers for a total of $170,000. Our Fire and Rescue Department includes 1 light track staff for $95,000, and Development Services is requesting 1 small electric vehicle for $45,000. And our IT replacement fund, this is year 5 of the IT strategic plan. In this fund, we will be setting aside $1.5 million for the 2nd year of the CAD RMS public safety system replacement, $250,000 for our citywide desktop replacement, and $130,000 to upgrade the audio and visual equipment in the council chambers. In our internal service fund for self-insurance, we're increasing it by $50,000 to fund ongoing administrative costs, mostly as a result of increasing premiums. Our Arts and Culture Master Plan, this is a reminder, the allocation of 0.5% of the 7% of Measure Q cannabis tax for a total of $393,494 in expenditures. It is essentially flat funding year over year. This fund is currently has a shortfall of about $155,000. However, there is sufficient fund balance in the Arts Culture Master Plan due to prior years of the general fund offsetting its expenses, and therefore it has some fund balance to help with the 24-25 budget shortfall. However, we're not anticipating any additional increases in the revenue to support that 155. Energy and sustainability, allocate $300,000 for our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System compliance, tree planting and small tree care program of $150,000, Placentia Avenue for $115,000, and some clean mobility options program for $500,000. In our first-time home buyers program, this is the fund that allocates the other 0.5% of the 7% of Measure Q cannabis tax. The actual fund balance at the end of this fiscal year is estimated to be about $230,000. We are recommending to come back to council with guidelines for a first-time home buyers program at a later date. Just to put into perspective what $230,000 might be able to provide, City of Costa Mesa's current median home prices is averaging about $1.4 million. 20% down would be about $220,000. This essentially would probably just help one home. In 24-25, we're also adjusting some recommendations due to the CMCEA MOU for 5 compensation inequity studies. CMCA has brought forth 5 classifications that they would like to bring to market: community services specialist, crime scene investigator, engineering technician, equipment mechanic, and office specialist, for a total estimated impact of $222,000 for 30 employees in these classifications and medians. For our general fund budget highlights. So our adopted general fund budget is about $180.3 million. We are proposing $189.9 million, or a $9.6 million increase, or a 5%. Our current CPI is approximately 3%, 5% is conservative. The $3.4 million reduction in transfers out is just essentially a realignment into internal rent category to ensure consistency with GAAP. For our revenue highlights, our property taxes are estimated at $60.5 million. This is an 11% growth over the current fiscal year. When the successor agency dissolved, some of those loan repayments were being realigned back into our property tax revenues, which accounts for the majority of the growth, plus a 4% increase, which we have seen historically in property taxes. An increase of TOT, estimated at $10.1 million, or 6% increase. Our sales tax, though, although it is increasing, it's starting to plateau, so we see a slight decrease in our sales tax of about $900,000, or 1% from the current year adopted budget. Our fees and charges at $13.1 million is growing by 35%. That's mostly due to a statutory change in our ambulance revenues. And our cannabis taxes and permits are estimated at $3.4 million, an increase of about $350,000. This pie shows the breakout of all of the different revenue categories in our general fund, with the sales tax being the highest at $81.5 million, followed by property tax at $60.4 million. This budget commits over 52% of the general fund to its public safety departments, our police and fire. It funds 2.6 new FTEs in all funds and 1.6 of it in the general fund. In addition, it funds a 3.27 FTEs that was approved at midyear, funds $6.8 million of the general fund towards our capital spending. We're utilizing the $2.8 million for the Lions Park debt payment for a total of $9.6 million, exceeding the required amount to comply with the CAN of 8.9. Annualizes our labor contractual obligations by $5.8 million. It includes our CalPERS increase of $2.3 million. It also continues the $4.3 million vacancy factor in the budget, of which $3.7 million is in the police department. It also includes a special event rates increasing by 3%, essentially the CPI. Some additional general fund increases include $700,000 for our ambulance program and emergency medical supplies, $220,000 for our parks and security agreement with Norfolk Northport Mesa Unified School District, funding for the biannual general municipal election of $140,000, the increase of our crossing guard contract by about $80,000, our senior transportation program by $30,000, and increased funding for our teen excursions, tickets, and transportation by about $20,000. There have been some recommendations to adjust our general fund. At the last City Council meeting on May 21st, City Council directed the staff to help identify funding for some existing programs that were previously utilized through CDBG. Staff is reallocating $57,000 in the general fund for 2 senior services programs, Meals on Wheels and Lunch Cafe. Additionally, staff will create some guidelines to ensure programs within CDBG are not reduced for vulnerable populations, such as seniors with food insecurities or fixed incomes, so that they are not recommended for future years' cuts. This is important because when the general fund starts to pick up CDBG type expenses, then these types of programs cannot be applied in the future for CDBG due to supplementation regulations. To strengthen our public safety, as mentioned earlier, more than 50% of the pie is dedicated to our police department and our fire and rescue department. This is just as you know, a regulatory requirement for our police department to provide a written equipment policy, which is currently posted on the police department's site, compile an inventory list, make sure that they are available to the public. The local governing body is notified 30 days prior to the approval, and obtain approval by the governing body, which is the City Council, before you tonight. Appropriations limit, I'm going to turn it over to Mark, our budget and purchasing manager, to go through the appropriations limit calculation.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The appropriation limit was created based on the Proposition 13 in 1978 and Proposition 4 in 1979 to limit the growth in government spending. And as such, the California Constitution requires that an annual appropriation limit, anything that exceeds the appropriation limit must be returned to taxpayers. And so the general taxes that account for these appropriation limits include property tax, sales tax, transient occupancy tax, franchise fees, cannabis tax, and motor vehicle tax. So the appropriation limit for 24-25 is $310 million. However, the city is only projected to spend $163 million of that, so we're far from reaching the appropriation limit by about $146 million. So there will be no proceeds returning to taxpayers. And it's just a formality that is just created just to ensure that government is spending responsibly and that it doesn't overspend and any overspend money gets returned to taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. In our category of achieving long-term fiscal sustainability, our general fund balance has increased through the last few fiscal years. In 2021, we were at $53.5 million. 21-22, we increased that to 57.8, and last year we ended at $59 million. Essentially, we have a structurally balanced general fund budget. We're not using ARPA or any general fund reserves. We're fully funding the CAN, which is 5% of general fund revenues and 1.5% of IT replacement fund. We're maximizing our economic recovery through strategic investments in citywide infrastructure, and it continues to include the $1 million in debt payments that we will be coming before you once we start getting ready to bond for the reconstruction of Fire Station number 2 or Fire Station number 4. For some of our financial achievements, We have strategically used ARPA to offset our fiscal impact of the pandemic. We've used ARPA towards small business grants, rental assistance, project home keys, and tenant eviction protection programs. We've eliminated structural deficits in multiple funds, such as the self-insurance fund and our equipment replacement fund. We have achieved and exceeded the City Council's reserve policy of $55 million by $4 million, and we've maintained the city's underlying AAA rating and AA rating of its 2017 lease revenue bonds. This provides you with an overview of the 24-25 budget calendar. We started in April 18th with the proposed CIP with the 5-pack. On April 23rd, we came to City Council. May 9th, the Parks and Community Services Commission also saw the CIP budget, followed by the Planning Commission on May 13th. On May 14th, the City Council was presented with the proposed operating budget study session. A 5-pack followed the following day on May 15th, and before you tonight is the first public hearing. If needed, we come back on June 11th for a study session and a June 18th adoption. With that, I will open it up to questions.
Any questions, council? So I don't have a question. I just have a statement. I think at least my thinking about the first-time home buyers program, your comment has reflected a misunderstanding of what I've said before, I think, and what I believe it is. I don't think that the idea was ever to fund for the entire down payment for one applicant, and in addition to that it would be for a median, house, right? So I know we're bringing this back. We're not talking about it, but I just want to make sure that everyone understands what at least is my vision. I don't know what the other council members think, but it's to supplement. So I don't know what that number is. It could be 20,000, could be 30,000, whatever. And typically that would go to a house of a first-time home buyer that would be, I would say, less than the median. Okay, that's all I have to say about that. And by the way, the budget is spectacular. I'm not going to say that in my questions. I'll say it in the motion. Oh, sorry, Lauren. I'm sorry, Councilmember Gamaros.
That's okay. I like Lauren too. So first of all, I just want to say that you did an amazing job, and this was very thorough. And when I look at the news and I see other cities that are in a $19 million shortfall, and here we are, not only in the red or the black, but we're in the green with a AAA and AA rating. It's very impressive, and it's a direct reflection on your heartfelt integrity and dedication to what it is that you're doing. So I just want to start off by saying thank you, because it's very apparent when we look at this. I'd like to direct you, please, to page 17 of your presentation. And I'm just going to kind of take off on some of the things that the mayor was talking about, and a guideline for a first-time buyers program that's going to come to council on a later date. I brought this up in the past, and I didn't really elaborate on it, so I would just kind of like to take a minute to elaborate and maybe ask if we can look at a public safety aspect to this, in that if we had an offering for public safety for a first-time buyers program, and one of the jobs of public safety is retainment, succession, and recruiting. And in order for us to retain who we have and to recruit new life out here, and to have a good succession plan, we have to have a way that they can afford to live here. And when I see things like Tustin, for example, is offering a $40,000 lateral to go and work in their city in public safety, it makes it very difficult for our public safety directors, the chiefs, to retain good people. So if we can look at some sort of a program, we used to have one, and it was probably 20 or 30 years ago, where there was a program for public safety as an incentive, not only to move here, but to stay here and to be able to afford to do that. If I can also refer you, just give me 1 second, to page, I think you said it was $220,000 would be a down payment on a $1.4 million home. So obviously that's a huge amount of money, and that would take, for some of us, a lifetime of savings to accomplish something like that. And like the mayor said, we're not looking to put a down payment in someone's pocket, but we would definitely have to have some sort of comparable process to retain those in the public safety sector. So if staff could take a look at that and maybe what would be a good proposal, and maybe look at what we've done historically to bring that up to date. And if we could include something in this, I think that would be great. If we can't, I understand, but I definitely wanted to put it out there so that this is something we can work towards. Other than that, my hat's off to you. Words can't even describe how thorough and great this was. So thank you very much.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Likewise, I'm very comforted by this budget. We're in very good shape in comparison to a lot of our neighboring cities, and so I do have some specific questions. I want to start with, on page 5 of the staff report, there's a proposal to appropriate $350,000 from the Parkland Acquisition Fund for the Open Space Master Plan, presumably for East Side and West Side Park studies. I guess my first question is, what's the status of that master plan update?
I will defer that to the appropriate.
I can speak to that since Brian wasn't here at the time. Do you mean the open space master plan that was conducted by the previous consultant?
I think there's only one open space master plan. I mean, I know there was some, we all were consulted as council members during an update, probably, I can't remember if it was after COVID or during COVID.
It may have been before, during, after, for the different council members. So I think I spoke to this last time, but that is in a draft form. It's been completed by that particular consultant. The work that was put together is dated because of the fact that it happened so long ago. And so what we're recommending is to add additional funding into the budget to refresh that open space master plan, if you will. It has data in it, but it's not what I would consider a plan, which is why it's been shelved at the moment. I think last time we spoke about this, I had recommended having PACS take a look at it, develop some recommendations for what the new open space master plan should add, with specific features, some deliverables in there that go above and beyond the plan that was put together or the data that was assembled previously. And so, but given the fact that it's outdated, a lot of the recommendations that were in there, we've already addressed. We've gotten $16.5 million in grant funds. So many of the park projects that were mentioned were already underway now. And so it needs to be updated and revised. I mean, we're happy to share it. I can tell you, I've looked at it multiple times. It's a document with a lot of data, but not much of a plan, if you will. And so I think taking a look at that through PACS and developing some strong recommendations and then bringing it to council for your approval is what we would recommend moving forward.
Okay, so what was the original budget for that master plan? What have we spent so far to date on that?
I don't have that number.
All right. Well, my concern is just redoing it at this dollar amount, which I can't say whether it's right or not, but to take the money also from the acquisition fund, which once that's gone, it's hard to replenish. So, okay, let me move on to something else. Let's see here. Oh, on the slide with the fleet vehicle purchases, I noticed that 2 of the line items identified electric vehicles, but the others didn't. And I don't know if that means that those types of vehicles are not, or trucks are not available either as electric or hybrid, or I think, and maybe I have some support up here, that we should look at that as a policy first option. I think Councilmember Reynolds would agree. So that just might be, I'm just making a comment on that. And then, let's see here. I think, City Manager, we talked about this a little bit offline, the community garden budget request that I made last time. I didn't see that identified yet on the CIP. Is it in out years?
It is, I think it's in 2027, 28, according to Carol's presentation. But Raja, do you want to point to the exhibit or where that could be found?
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem Harlan, it's in this 5-year CIP, and it's under the park section.
Okay.
Oh, this seems to be an older version. Yeah. Yeah, it's item number 61. It's in the last,
What page?
it's in the, it says 687 here. It's towards the end of the, it's attachment 15
Okay,
under parks.
okay. All right, I guess we're supposed to be asking questions more than comments, but I do have comments on the CIP program, and maybe I'll save that for later. The last thing is, I'll just bring it up now because I'd like it to be part of whatever motion we have. So staff is aware of the Santa Ana Avenue bike lane missing gap between 22nd and 21st. And based on staff's recommendation, that's a CIP, that's an actual project. So I'd like to make sure that's actually part of the budget. This, to my mind, literally means adding a stripe and some curbing, and obviously there's, I'm not minimizing it, but there's a little more to it, but essentially that's the project. Seems like that's something should be literally an easy fix. So I do want to make sure that's part of this. And then lastly, it was actually brought to my attention by one of our arts commissioners that our budget for our arts grants, I'm not going to ask you to hazard a guess, I'll just tell you, it's only $7,500, which to me seems very, very low. And by comparison, I was informed that Carlsbad, which has a similar population to us, they have $117,000 for grant awards up to $7,500. Laguna, $320,000, grant awards up to $20,000. Santa Ana actually had a lot of money using it from ARPA, over $400,000. And even Newport has $30,000. So I think we could afford to put a little bit more money into our arts grant, seeing that there are some other things I noticed here. Even just extending our contract for the crossing guards was $80,000. So I'd like to find a way to bump that up. So since we are City of the Arts, that there's actually some substantial money to be put towards that. And that's it for now.
Okay. I just have a question in response to Mayor Pro Tem's comments, as I tend to support those two things, the adding the stripe and whatever the curbing is on 21st and 22nd, and then also adding some additional money to the arts grants for the next fiscal year. But let's say we did that. How would that affect, would we be able to pass a budget today and include those two particular items? Or would we have to go back and do the homework and bring it back on the 18th?
I'll let Raja speak on the CIP, and I'll speak on the arts.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, on the Santa Ana Avenue bike lane project, so the issue is a little bit more than the dollar amounts. We have the funding within another similar project that we can reallocate towards the project. So we don't need any additional monies for that one. But what it needs is, it needs considerable amount of staff time because we have to conduct community meetings. We have to go through the design of the project and then implement the project. And when we come to the implementation, we'll transfer money from class 2 and 3 bike project that we have some monies left towards that Santa Ana Avenue project.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of though allocating the funds, we could do it tonight and then pass a budget tonight.
we don't need to, I mean, you can direct that, we use money from the class 2 and 3 bike projects.
Got it.
Towards that one.
Mr. Mayor, all we have to do is add that to the CIP.
Yes,
Beautiful.
we can do that.
What's the answer on the arts, supplementation of the arts grants?
So for the arts plan, it's actually for 24, 25, it's $10,000. The current year is $7,500. So if you wanted to go above and beyond that $10,000, I would probably recommend utilizing some year-end savings in the current year and then just carrying it over into the Arts and Culture Master Plan to help offset. Definitely, we can do 5, 10,000, depending on what you're thinking.
So we could go up to 20,000 and we could still pass a budget tonight?
As long as you can, part of your motion is to allow for the general fund year-end savings of up to $10,000 into this fund to help increase this line item.
Okay.
Just one point of clarification, that would be a one-time adjustment because it's not part of the actual budget. You'd be using year-end savings, which we'll likely have, but it doesn't address the recurring, it doesn't make it a recurring program every single year because that fund has a deficit currently.
Correct. Currently, this fund has a $155,000 deficit in 24-25. So this would increase it to $165,000. By utilizing general fund year-end savings and transferring that, we would increase the fund balance to make it available for next year.
Okay. Does anybody know what we used those grants? Grants were awarded, the $7,500. What did people get and what did they do with them?
Thank you, Mayor. I can speak to that. The Arts Commission reviews applications, and there are different community groups, nonprofit groups that provide arts and culture events, opportunities for the community to engage in those activities, and the commission is who decides the grant funding amounts depending on the applications that they receive.
Do you remember any, like an example of one?
Yeah, Songs of the Canyon was a recipient.
Oh, good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. That's the concert at Canyon Park?
Correct.
Okay, that's very, very good. Thank you. Great example. Okay, thank you.
If I can just add some color, I last week did a debrief with the organizer of that event, and he did say that grant was critical to him being able to do the event, and that it would be nice if it could be a little bit higher in terms of making the event more sustainable. He still is relying primarily on sponsorships. So, yeah, I think it's a really good idea.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for those answers. Are we ready to open it to the public? Yeah. Okay, let's open it up to the public.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem Harlan's comments about the land acquisition comments. It does propose using $350K out of that fund for land acquisition for the open space master plan, which in my view should be an operating cost. His comment also about once that funding is gone, it's hard to replenish, and that is very definitely true. Despite efforts over a number of years, a project being in the CIP to fund additional land acquisition, mostly that cost or that funding has been deferred and deferred and deferred. So currently there's $385K in that fund. Council or staff is proposing using $350. That basically guts that fund. And it would be very difficult to replace this thing. In addition, the open space and recreation element within the general plan, the goal is to add park space, specifically policy OSR 1.D, prioritize the acquisition of land. 1.S, adding more park space in the city. So once that money is gone, it's going to be very hard to replace. I would, again, advise or recommend that be funded through operating costs. I'm sure with a budget that The year hasn't started yet. It's a $190 million budget. I have every confidence in staff that $350K can be found, if you will, without jeopardizing any existing initiatives or programs going on. So again, I think that funding should remain in place in that land acquisition fund and not utilizing for an operational cost. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else wish to be heard from the chambers? Okay, how about on Zoom?
Roberto, you may speak.
Roberto, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you, Mayor and City Council. This is Roberto. I've been listening in for the meeting. Thank you so much for city staff for your work on the budget. I know it's very difficult, and getting outreach to the community and getting community output specifically from the Latino community, may be difficult, but here I am. And so I just want to share my thoughts on, continue to please. I did see, I know you all mentioned the how some of the city staff are being moved to address like housing in general. But I want to continue to urge you to continue to invest in supporting tenants in the city of Costa Mesa in a more robust way. More specifically, a method of tracking evictions. Currently, there's no proactive way to track evictions. It's more of a receipt, and that's only once we've reached landlords. And so with the more robust tracking method, like a rental registry, it'll lead to more robust communication to reach tenants and to reach landlords. So I think I ask of you of that. I also, I know that you all are moving the positions, but please don't forget about mapping out where evictions are taking place in the city. Having less staff to look at that, I think, continue to not put that as a back burner item, to please put that as a forefront, to have that data be published. So organizations like ours can do, precise outreach to those areas where evictions are taking place by district. So please, we don't know what we don't know. It may seem as though evictions have decreased, but without a robust tracking method, we're not able to, I believe we only mail out letters to the landlords. So something that's more up to date would help in better tracking those evictions. So again, in closing, just continue to please support tenants in your city. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. No further speakers. Okay, so let's close public comment. Does anybody want to make a motion and we can have a discussion? Why don't you make your motion? You could add your stuff.
Well, okay. Go. No, I wasn't going to make a motion.
I'm happy to undo. I was going to do it. I don't remember all of the.
Well,
Okay.
it's clear.
I will move that
do
we approve the budget as presented and open for suggested amendments that I've not been keeping track of.
Okay. I'll second that.
Okay. And are you going to ask for your amendments?
Okay. So let me.
No, she has amendments.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
No, I was trying to remember the ones suggested. So I will go from memory and then we'll add to it from here. So incorporate an addition up to $10,000 from the current fiscal year into the arts grants budget. Oops. Did I get that right?
Arts and Culture Master Plan budget.
Arts and Culture Master Plan budget. Okay, thank you. What else did you have on there?
We don't need to do anything.
Oh, adding the Santa Ana bike lane as a CIP project.
And I guess this is a question for council. So and maybe first with staff. So if we were to pursue redoing the open space master plan, where else could we find that $350,000 that's budgeted?
The only place I can think of right now would be any general fund year-end savings, assuming that we will have it. My assumption at this point is we will.
Okay.
Can I, oh, go ahead.
Well, so my thinking on this, and I'm interested in others' opinions, we sensibly haven't had an open space master plan that we've used for the last 4 years. It doesn't seem to have hurt us in our park development. I'm by no means advocating that we don't have a plan, but in my experience too, we don't really use our plans as effectively as we should. So I'm a little hesitant to spend that kind of money knowing we have so many other priorities and other planning efforts, and especially taking money from an acquisition fund. So I'm kind of leaning towards not doing the open space master plan right now if it requires $350,000 that maybe we want to devote to other things and relies on savings at the end of the year.
Yeah, let me, one thing I was thinking about including the motion was keeping that, keeping the land acquisition fund intact, so keeping that $350,000 in the land acquisition fund. A question for the city manager, and a similar reaction to, I mentioned that I've sent pages of comments on an early draft of the open space master plan back in 2017, right? It's been a long saga. I'm a little bit reluctant to add money into it, given that, we haven't really gotten much from it. And as Councilmember Harlan mentions, Mayor Pro Tem Harlan mentions, we haven't needed it. We have been clear that we want a more structured approach to how we are investing and maintaining our parks, but I would rather have a clearer picture of what data we got from the additional funds we put in a couple years ago and how we would do that approach before we allocate the funds. So can we sort of develop a high-level strategy before we decide to allocate the funds?
Sure.
Okay. So we would leave the $350,000 in the land acquisition fund, but it could still, maybe it's part of our strategic planning exercise coming up to talk about next steps on the open space master plan.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Then at that time, we can appropriate, we'll know better about year end, and we'll have maybe other recommendations once we scour other funds. Okay?
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Okay. So I guess the third adjustment in that motion would be maintaining not reallocating the $350,000 from the land acquisition fund. Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. Does the second concur to his suggestion?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I make an additional motion in that, please?
Yeah, this is a request for amendment, yeah, go ahead.
Just a small one. So I just want to make sure in this, that we're doing this, that we also include impartiality, what I asked for, and that would be a retainment, succession, and recruiting first-time homebuyers plan for public safety. As far as the dollar amount goes, I think we have to kind of figure that out, but it's something I want us to work towards. Can someone comment on how we would go about that, or?
So I think what I'd like to do is work with our staff. When we come back with the proposed guidelines, we can cover that issue as well as any other categories that you would want to make a priority with the first-time home buyers program. So I think it's probably better for us to do it then. So we need to circle back with Mikkel, look at what we've done in the past, what's the best practices now, and how we think we could best utilize the funds, and which populations we think we would suggest to you in terms of options, in terms of priorities. So I think it's maybe better suited for when we bring back the guidelines.
That's fine. I just want to make sure we include it so that we do take action on this and we have something to report on. If we could include that, please.
So I have a question for Director Sethuraman about the capital improvement program specifically as it relates to the golf course. Remember we had that discussion at the study session, and we established that there you directed me to page 242 and 243, and we established that 1.65 million, if you consider half of the 1.2 million for the golf and tennis center improvements, has been allocated to improving the golf course and modernizing the golf course. What I can't find in the book is when that is going to be spent, okay? So, I don't want it to, I'm getting a fair amount of complaints about the condition, and I'm not going to repeat the discussions I had before about how I think there's a lot of deferred work that needs to be done out there that has needed to be done for a long time. So where can I find in the book when that money is going to be spent? I can see that with respect to many other projects, but I don't see a reference to the golf course.
So, Mayor Stevens, actually, so the money is already allocated, so it can be spent any time.
Okay.
It depends on our staff allocations for projects. So right now, as you can imagine, we have about 80 projects that are underway right now, and we're trying to get through quite a few of them, especially the grant projects. So as soon as I have some availability of staff, we can look into that project.
So we don't need to take any action tonight with respect to that. 'Cause
No,
it's in a little bit of a different category, because I know, and you've been very clear of explaining that it's like the 7 stages of grief, right? There's the 7 stages of a CIP project, right? You've got the outreach and the
We got
design and the and it goes through. But if you're just trying to fix bunkers, right? We don't need to have a community meeting about that. We don't, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I can tell you what the golfers want. They want the bunkers fixed. So
Yes,
it's
Mr.
like
Evans,
we don't
yeah.
have to go through all 7 steps.
No, we don't. So the bunkers, that's the easier one to implement, actually. So we work with our partner Danny Lane there.
Yeah.
And he can actually get that fixed, and he can invoice us and we pay them.
Got it.
So we work with them in that capacity too. So I'll reach out with him and go through that particular project.
So we have the money, and basically the Mesa Verde Partners is kind of a force multiplier for the Public Works Department.
Yes, we want to make sure that the costs are reasonable, so we go through that exercise. But other than that, yeah.
They are fixing a bunker, right, on Los Lagos in the first hole. So it is happening.
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. All right, I just want to make sure we didn't need to do anything tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I had one last question. I know the answer to this, Mr. Setharaman, but given the fact there were a few comments that were submitted, there was some confusion about why wasn't Brentwood Park in the CIP. I know the Monday was appropriated last fiscal year, so I just want to make my constituents at ease that if that project proceeds, it's just not listed under what we're proposing for this CIP.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk, do you understand the motion on the floor?
Mr. Mayor, yes, I do.
Okay, good. So the moving council member, I believe, was Councilmember Reynolds. So you have the floor. You can talk to your motion.
Yeah. As Ms. Molina, Director Molina, and her team were giving the presentation, I had just an unusual, I shouldn't say unusual, but usually I have my long list of questions. I had an unusual feeling of just satisfaction and, frankly, an overwhelming desire to give you all a round of applause, and I hope we'll do that after this vote. It's a really fantastic budget. I think I think we're at the end of really hard times. Maybe, using all the ARPA funds is a good milestone for that. Like, we're past the major challenges of uncertainty in terms of budget. As some other council members have mentioned, I'm really proud of Costa Mesa being in a position to continue to invest in our city and not look at where we need to cut back. I think we all have ideas of ways we'd love to spend another $10 million if we had it, and I think hopefully some of the work we're doing over the next few years will help us, continue to be in a position to continue to invest. But I'm just really proud of this work. I had very few questions, and the questions I had were asked by other council members. So I'm just incredibly satisfied and proud of this team. I'm hoping and expecting that we pass this tonight, and it's just a really good way to start the next year. So thank you all for your work.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Sure. I echo that appreciation. I think Councilmember Reynolds really captured my sentiment as well. I've said this before, the budget is really the true expression of our values. It's where we put our money to show what's important to us. And while at times that might seem a little tedious because we're getting into the minutia of funds, and it's important. And I think I appreciate the work that we've done, council and staff, in trying to get to where we are tonight. And I likewise feel a fair amount of satisfaction about this process. So thank you.
Anybody else wish to be heard on the budget?
Mayor, I'd like to make a few comments if council is done, but
Well, I'm not
I can wait. Okay.
Yeah. So, but you can go last. I'll give you the last word. I do want to make some comments. I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. I've been through some really weird and crazy budget cycles, and the level and I'm not going to tell war stories, but I could. If anybody wants to meet me afterwards, I'll tell them war stories. I'm going to spare you. But we have had some crazy, crazy budget cycles. Brenda knows. And what this reflects, and the finance department rightly gets a tremendous amount of credit because they deserve it and they're great. Our city manager, who comes out of a background of finance, does a great job, and in working with our finance director, Ms. Molina, a great job. But what it reflects is across the board, directors living within their means. It reflects associations, as we mentioned earlier when we passed that new business item with the Fire Management Association, understanding and buying into our goals of financial sustainability and being reasonable in terms of their demands. It requires every employee, all 600 employees, and I think it's beautiful, actually. I'm going to go pulling together, right? Pulling together, rowing in the same direction to get to this point. So, like I said, you deserve, you're here presenting this, and you and your department deserve a ton of credit, but it's a reflection of every single employee. And then I'll go one step further. We have 12,000 businesses in the city. They're pulling together. We couldn't do this without South Coast Plaza and Molly Unger and all the people that are working so hard at South Coast Plaza. We talk about Andrew, we couldn't do it. Paulette Lombardi-Fries, who is here, that promotes the city. We couldn't do it without the Mercado. We couldn't do it without Home Depot. We couldn't do it without all these people that come to work, come into the city, and we couldn't do it without our residents, our taxpayers, people that build our houses and maintain our houses and buy our houses to improve our property taxes. This budget is a complete and total effort of an entire community from top to bottom. We have to keep it going. We have to do the things that are and support Travel Costa Mesa and bring tourism and bring new, maybe old, new people into the town, like the folks from China. We have to support our businesses. We have to support our Measure Q businesses, which has some controversy up on the dais and in the public, but the Measure Q business is one of the only businesses that provide a new revenue source to the city. We mentioned a new revenue source to the other new revenue source fairly recently to the city that's been going so well, and that's our ambulance transport system. We talked about the golf course. $4 million practically that's hitting the bottom line from the golf course. Thank you to the golf course. Thank you to Mesa Verde Partners. We have opportunities that we have to seize in the future to take us into the next generation, and primarily what I'm talking about is LA 28 and the Olympics, okay? We have to be cutting edge as a council, as a staff, as a community to continue this high level and grow on our fiscal sustainability. We're a great city. We're more than just a solvent city. We're more than just a sustainable city. We are a beacon on the hill, and as Mayor Pro Tem pointed out, there's a lot of cities around us, right around us, that border us, that can't say that. So God bless Costa Mesa, and thank you for the great work that you've done. Now, City Manager, you had something you wanted to say.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for those kind remarks. Yes, there's something that I would like to say since it is the city manager's proposed budget.
I think it's great. I gave you credit. I gave you credit for it.
I just really wanted to thank staff, first and foremost, because it takes a lot of discipline to put together a budget like this and to do it year after year after year after year. And Carol, you make it look easy. Sometimes I think maybe it looks too easy, but I am just really proud of this budget tonight. I'm really proud of this executive team, how we all pull together, how we work as a team. Not every city is like that. There's a lot of infighting. There's a lot of combative issues that come up when you have limited resources and you're all trying to figure out how to fund it. And we have just a class act of department heads that understand that the budget is a complicated process, but in the end, if we all work together and we're all in concert, it really helps every single resident, every single business, and all the employees of the city. So thank you for that. Thank you for your tenacity. Mayor, I agree with you about the associations. They have been phenomenal. They understand inherently now how important it is to balance the budget. I really want to thank Mark. He's our new budget and purchasing manager. He came in, is it 6 weeks ago? How long have you been here? 3 weeks? 2 weeks? March 4th. And he rolled up his sleeves. He's been here till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, immediately jumped in and just took the bull by the horns and ran with it. We're so lucky to have you, Mark. Thanks for choosing us. And we have also some other new employees that just got hired into the finance department, so we're really happy to have them. And council, thank you for your leadership. Cities rise and fall based on their, in large part, fiscal discipline or lack thereof. And you have been exceedingly disciplined. You have also trusted us when we've asked for increases for staff, compensation adjustments for the employees. You've trusted that we could manage that. And hopefully we've earned that trust and we've kept that trust, and it means a lot to us, and we'll continue to do that. But thank you for your leadership. Thank you for making sure that we have the resources to provide good services, and that you've entrusted us with the fiscal stewardship of the city, and it's not something that we take very lightly. And so I feel very proud about this tonight as well. And again, thanks to everybody, and especially to our outstanding finance department and team and director.
All right. With that, let's call for the question.
Motion carries 6-0.
Where are those green paddles when you need them? All right. Okay, so I think that's all we have. Thank goodness we don't have anybody to adjourn the meeting for. So thank you, everybody. Great meeting. We're adjourned.